Hey guys, so, tonight, we're going somewhere soft, candlelit, and honestly, a little bit surprising. Because being born a princess in the Middle Ages sounds glamorous, but trust me, half the time, it was basically congratulations. Tiny royal baby, here is a world of responsibility, strict rules, and adults arguing about who owns which muddy field because of you. And as always, we're keeping things slow, calm, and a little boring in that sleepy, warm way. Imagine a stone castle, the kind with drafty hallways, narrow windows, and tapestries, doing their absolute best to pretend they're insulation. Somewhere deep inside, in a private chamber, where the most important members of the household are gathered, a princess is being born. This isn't like modern hospitals, with quiet please keep calm signs. This is more like midwives moving around like they're in a medieval cooking show, noble women whispering, servants rushing in and out, prayers being muttered, candles burning down, and everyone hoping the baby appears before sunrise because those candles are expensive. And honestly, the princess herself, zero clue what's going on. She's entering the world to the sound of chants, bells, and someone probably shouting, "Send for the priest." Because medieval people never missed an opportunity to include a priest in anything. The moment she's born, it's not even "wow, adorable baby." It's more like, is this a boy or a girl? And if she's a girl, half the room goes, okay, not ideal, but we can work with this. Because politically speaking, a princess is basically a future marriage alliance with legs. Nobody's cuddling her like, "Oh, sweet little baby." They're mostly thinking about which duke or prince she might be married off to in like 14 to 20 years. Medieval nobles played the long game, and apparently the long game began at birth. But before any of that future marriage business, there's a whole ritual, the washing of the newborn in warm water that was hopefully heated enough, because medieval castles were cold even in summer. After the bath, she's wrapped tightly in swaddling bands, which is basically medieval baby burrito mode. They genuinely believed this helped the baby grow straight and strong. Or honestly, maybe they just liked how easy it was to carry what was basically a parcel with a face. And of course there's baptism. Medieval people didn't wait for convenient timings. Babies were baptized fast, like extremely fast, because everyone was terrified of the baby dying unbaptized. So the princess is basically born, blink blink, and then she's being hurried off to be baptized just in case. Imagine your first big appearance in the world being a formal church ceremony you definitely did not consent to. The baptism is huge though. They bring out the finest Robestini versions of noble clothing with surprisingly fancy embroidery for someone who hasn't learned object permanence yet. There's holy water, chanting, godparents carefully chosen from powerful families, because having influential godparents was medieval networking at its peak. And somewhere during this ceremony, everyone is already deciding her personality before she's even tasted solid food. They're like, "Oh, she will be wise. Oh, she will be virtuous. Oh, she will bring peace." And she's just sitting there sneezing. Once she's back in the castle, the next phase of princess life begins, the nursery, which is like a medieval VIP lounge but for babies. Her personal nursery is staffed by nurses, rockers, and attendants, whose entire job is making sure she stays alive, warm, fed, clean, and raised according to royal standards. A princess couldn't just do normal baby things like chewing on furniture or playing in the mud, because even as a baby, she carried the weight of the family name. You drop a regular baby and people scold the nurse. You drop a princess and historians will still be talking about it 800 years later. Her first memories of life would be warm rooms with thick wool rugs, cradles carved by skilled craftsmen, wooden toys that look suspiciously heavy enough to be a blunt weapon, and tapestries showing heroic ancestors doing heroic things, while she's basically fighting her own battle against nap time. And food. Medieval princesses didn't breastfeed from their mothers. Royal women usually had wet nurses. These wet nurses were chosen for moral purity, excellent health, and presumably good vibes. They were forbidden from eating garlic or drinking too much wine, because apparently medieval people believed garlic-infused milk would turn the princess into someone who smelled like garlic. So the wet nurse had a surprisingly strict lifestyle, because the baby's future depended on it. Talk about pressure. As she grows from newborn to toddler, her world stays small but very supervised. Everything from how she sits, to how she sleeps, to how she's spoken to is regulated. Princesses were expected to be gentle, quiet, and well behaved from the moment they could form any opinion on anything. Crying, fine. Too much crying. Someone takes notes. Throwing a toy, completely unacceptable. Being curious, only allowed if the curiosity didn't involve touching anything dangerous or muddy or remotely fun. Every day in the nursery follows a rhythm. She wakes up to soft singing or the sound of shutters being opened. The air is cool. She's wrapped in layers because medieval castles were basically stone refrigerators. The attendants speak to her in polite voices as if she's already a diplomat. She learns to walk, wobbling around holding onto furniture, while grown women whisper "No, no, careful my lady, careful," as if she's made of porcelain. And honestly, in their minds, she kind of was. There's no running allowed, no loud shouting, no climbing, and absolutely no throwing things. Her childhood is structured around being the future of political strategy, not the future of fun. But she does have toys blocks, carved horses, maybe a doll if she's lucky. These dolls are made of cloth or wood, wearing tiny medieval clothing that someone definitely spent too much time sewing. She also has books, not picture books, but richly illuminated manuscripts with gold leaf that she is not allowed to touch because her toddler hands are considered a natural disaster. As she grows older, somewhere between ages 3 and 5, she starts learning manners. Imagine a tiny girl being taught how to curtsy, how to greet nobles, how to sit still for long periods, and how to act like a miniature adult. The adults around her reinforce constantly, "You are important, you are noble, your life has a purpose, and please, for the love of all things holy, don't spill anything on your dress." Her dresses themselves are heavy, layered, laced, stiff, and sometimes itchy. Medieval clothing did not care about children's comfort. She looked like a tiny adult woman most of the time. It's adorable to us, but imagine being 5 years old and trying to play while wearing 40 layers of fabric and a belt that jingles every time you breathe. And yet, not everything is strict. There are soft moments. Her nurses rock her to sleep while telling stories about knights and dragons. She hears lullabies sung in Old French, Middle English, or whatever language her kingdom speaks. She watches sunlight move across the stone floor. She listens to rain tapping against glassless windows covered with oiled cloth. She feels the warmth of the fireplace and the weight of a wool blanket, heavy enough to flatten a modern child. Because at the end of the day, a princess is still just a child. And children, even royal ones, find wonder in the smallest things, even in a world built on politics and expectations. And as she gets closer to age 6 or 7, the nursery doors start to open wider. New responsibilities begin. Lessons, etiquette, embroidery, languages, religion, and the constant reminder that she is not just a kid, she is someone who is expected to behave like a symbol. And as she gets closer to age 6 or 7, the nursery doors begin to feel less like walls and more like thresholds into a much larger, much more serious world. Up until now, her life was mostly warm rooms, soft blankets, whispering attendants, and the occasional dramatic breakdown because someone took away a wooden horse she wasn't even playing with. But now, her world expands into something far more structured. She wakes up one morning, and instead of being treated like a cute royal baby who occasionally forgets how knees work, she is treated like, well, a princess with responsibilities. Medieval childhood wasn't a long dreamy era to us, more like a short tutorial level before the adulthood difficulty mode kicked in. The first thing that changes is her education, and medieval education didn't exactly ease a child into it. She starts learning to read prayers long before she learns to read stories. Her tutor, probably a serious-looking cleric with the personality of a brick wall, expects her to memorize lines from religious texts the way modern kids memorize cartoon theme songs. He speaks to her like she is already a small adult, which to him she is. There's no good job, sweetie, no gold star stickers, no colorful workbooks. Instead, he gives her a wooden tablet, chalk, and an expression that says, "Your soul depends on this." She's taught to sit with her back straight, hands folded, eyes focused. If she wiggles too much, which she will, because she S7, one of the attendants clears her throat with the kind of sound that means "please stop or I will cry from stress." And even though her tiny heart is full of 7-year-old chaos, she learns to sit still, because she has been told her entire life that being a princess means being perfectly composed at all times, which is unrealistic. But medieval adults thrived on unrealistic expectations. languages come next. Depending on where she lives, she might learn Latin, French, or the local dialect of her kingdom. Imagine being 7 years old and learning a language that half the adults in the kingdom don't speak. She doesn't get to ask, "Why do I have to learn this?" The answer is always the same: because nobles must be intelligent. No one mentions that half of medieval nobles couldn't read, but she's a princess. Expectations for her were higher by default. Then there's music. A royal princess is expected to learn singing, harp playing, or sometimes even the organ. And medieval harps, they're bigger than her, at least at first. She sits in a chair far too tall for her legs, plucking strings that buzz under her fingers. Some days it sounds angelic. Most days it sounds like a confused goose. But everyone in the room nods approvingly, because she is the royal child. Anything she does must be adorable, even when it's objectively not. Embroidery enters her life, like an uninvited but permanent guest. Embroidery was one of the defining skills of noblewomen, not because it was fun, although some enjoyed it, but because it symbolized patience, devotion, and refined femininity. So she receives a small hoop, colored threads, and instructions that sound extremely simple until she actually tries them. The needle pricks her fingers so many times, she starts to wonder if embroidery is a secret medieval blood ritual. The adults tell her she's doing beautifully. The adults are lying. Her wardrobe also evolves. Gone are the simplified baby versions of noble clothing. Now she's wearing layers upon layers: linen underdress, wool overdress, sometimes velvet, sometimes silk if her family is wealthy enough. Every piece is laced or pinned in a way that requires 2 grown women to complete. And the funniest part, she grows so fast that half these outfits last only 1 season before being handed down to younger siblings or remade into smaller garments. Medieval parenting was frugal whether you were a peasant or a princess. The castle begins to feel both bigger and smaller. Bigger because she now walks through rooms she was never allowed to enter before: great halls, chapels, courtyards. Smaller because every move she makes is watched, every interaction evaluated. She's expected to greet nobles with perfect manners, never speak out of turn, and perform a flawless curtsy, even when she's tired, hungry, or coming down with a medieval cold, which is like a modern cold, but twice as dramatic and half as treatable. Her meals become more formal, too. She sits at a small table with fine wooden bowls and elaborate tablecloths. There's roasted meat, bread, cheese, fruits depending on the season, and watered wine because medieval people believed water alone was suspicious. She's taught how to eat slowly, how to use a knife properly, and how to never under any circumstances spill food on her dress. Spilling food is considered spiritually offensive to the gods of laundry, which in medieval times consisted mainly of overworked servants. Eventually, she starts joining her parents' king and queen in public ceremonies, not because she understands politics, but because a princess is a symbol, and everyone wants to see her. When she walks into the hall holding a noblewoman's hand, nobles bow and smile and whisper behind their hands. Some say she looks just like her mother. Some say she has her father's eyes. Others say things like "how fortunate for the kingdom," or "I hope she grows up strong." She doesn't understand any of it. She's just trying not to trip. Then one day, something big happens. A portrait is commissioned. Medieval portraits aren't exactly accurate. They show people the way artists think they should look, not the way they actually look. So while she's still missing a couple of baby teeth, the painting shows her with a perfect smile. While she's shorter than the average goat, the painting shows her tall and graceful. It's basically medieval Photoshop, but sitting still for the painting is torture. She has to sit in one position for hours, wearing her heaviest dress, while the artist tells her things like "tilt your chin up a little" and "don't blink so much." She tries her best, but ends up blinking anyway. Life continues like this for years. Less playing, more learning, fewer moments of freedom, more moments of responsibility. And then something even bigger happens. She becomes aware of her value in the political world. Not consciously, of course, she's still a child, but through overheard conversations, sudden visits from important guests, long discussions about alliances, her parents begin to talk about her in a way that is both loving and strategic. She starts hearing phrases like "potential match," or "future alliance," or "arranged at 13 if necessary." She doesn't understand the full meaning, but she understands enough to realize that her life is not completely her own. Sometimes she's sent away to another noble household for fostering, which was extremely common. It wasn't a punishment, it was medieval networking. The idea was that she'd be raised with other noble families to strengthen bonds between kingdoms or powerful houses. Imagine being 9 years old and packed off to another castle to live with people you barely know, expected to behave perfectly and make a good impression at all times. It's lonely at first. The rooms feel strange, the customs slightly different, the food seasoned differently. But children are adaptable, even royal ones, and she slowly becomes comfortable in her new surroundings. In the household where she's fostered, she meets new tutors, new companions, sometimes noble girls her age who will become lifelong friends. They play quietly because loud play is unbecoming, but they still play. They tell stories, braid each other's hair, practice court dances, and whisper about the grown-ups' secrets, like medieval mini-gossip columnists. Sometimes they sneak a moment of rebellion, like running in the garden or climbing a low wall when the adults aren't looking. But rebellion is short-lived, because one of the attendants always catches them with that iconic medieval disapproving stare. Her education becomes even more advanced around age 11 or 12. Now she's learning diplomacy, not directly, but through observing conversations, watching how her parents or foster parents interact with visiting nobles, learning when to speak and when to stay silent. She's taught to recognize the difference between a friendly smile and a politically dangerous one. She learns that compliments from nobles always come with a hidden motive. She learns how to give non-answers to questions she doesn't want to answer, an ancient skill every politician still uses. She also learns household management. Medieval princesses were expected to someday run large estates, so she's taught how to oversee servants, manage supplies, and make sure nothing burns down. It's like medieval girl boss training, but with more candles and less fresh water. She learns which fabrics are most valuable, how to choose spices, how to store food for winter, and how many staff are required to run a household efficiently. It's all part of preparing her for womanhood, which medieval society believed began absurdly early. And then, marriage negotiations begin. She's still basically a child, but nobles treat marriage arrangements like chess pieces. Someone suggests she'd be a good match for the prince of a nearby region. Someone else says perhaps a duke's son. Her parents or her guardians consider all the political benefits. These discussions happen around her, not with her. The medieval world does not ask princesses what they want. It only informs them when the decision is made. She goes on with her lessons, her routines, her small joys, her quiet frustrations. She watches the seasons turn from snowy winters to blooming springs to warm summers full of festivals she sometimes gets to attend in carefully supervised ways. She grows taller, her dresses longer, her manners more polished, her world more complicated. And yet, beneath all the formality, she remains a girl with quiet dreams. She wonders about the world outside the castle walls. She imagines what her life will be like someday. She listens to stories of knights, travelers, saints, and magical creatures, and she lets her imagination wander far beyond the limitations of her role. Even princesses dream, especially princesses. But the medieval world isn't done shaping her. There's still more waiting for her court life. Expectations, politics, pressure, and the strange combination of luxury and restriction that defines every royal childhood. And slowly, without even noticing, she is being prepared for a destiny she didn't choose. And slowly, without noticing, she is being prepared for a destiny she didn't choose. Every lesson, every polite smile, every carefully measured word is shaping her into someone who is expected to represent her entire kingdom long before she even understands what a kingdom truly is. Childhood in the Middle Ages was short, but childhood for a princess was practically a rumor. She grew up surrounded by comfort, but not freedom. Loved, but controlled. Important, but powerless. A strange mix of privilege and pressure that she carries like embroidery she didn't ask to sew. As the years pass and she enters her early teens age, medieval society already considered the threshold of adulthood, her day becomes a swirl of ritual, education, and constant watchfulness. She wakes before sunrise most days, not because she wants to, but because the castle wakes early, the servants wake early, and royalty is expected to be an example of discipline. One attendant opens the shutters, letting in a draft of cold air that instantly reminds her this is a stone building, not a cozy cottage. She wraps herself in a cloak while another attendant prepares warm water for washing her face. Privacy is not a thing she gets. Medieval princesses basically live their entire early lives supervised, as if freedom itself might cause a political accident. Her meals are simple: in the morning bread, soft cheese, sometimes fruit if it's summer, and always watered wine because medieval people trusted wine more than water. As she eats, a tutor might stand nearby, reviewing the plan for the day. Lessons in languages or scripture, practice in sewing or music, time spent listening to political discussions she doesn't fully understand but must pretend to, and sometimes long hours in church, because a medieval princess could never be too pious. And yet, she still has moments of quiet humanity. Sometimes she sits near a window, looking over the courtyard. She sees the stable boys laughing as they brush the horses, or the kitchen servants carrying baskets of herbs, or the younger children chasing chickens in the yard. She wonders what it would feel like to run freely like that. But the thought fades quickly because she knows she won't, not in this life. Her role is to be calm, composed, and useful. Around this time, her clothing also changes. The dresses become heavier, more layered, more symbolic. Girls of noble birth wore dresses that communicated rank, the way modern people use diplomas or business cards. Rich fabrics, bright dyes, embroidered family emblems, they all tell the world who she is. It's beautiful, but it's also a costume she can never take off. Even her hair becomes part of the performance. Elaborate braids, ribbons, veils, all arranged painstakingly by attendants who take their work as seriously as a general planning a battle. And while all this is happening, the conversations around her become more and more centered on her future. She hears her parents or guardians talking late into the night, her name repeated among words like inheritance, dowry, treaty, dynasty. It's strange to hear her life described like a piece of property, but that's how medieval nobility viewed marriage. A princess wasn't just a daughter, she was a diplomatic asset. Sometimes she catches bits of conversation that confuse her. Someone saying, "The king of that region has 2 sons," or "their family needs an alliance," or "she would bring peace between our lands." She wants to ask what they mean, but she knows she won't get a real answer. Adults in her world don't explain things to children. They simply expect children to obey. When foreign envoys visit, they pay special attention to her. They watch her manners, her walk, her posture, the way she speaks. They note everything. It doesn't matter that she's 13. In their minds, she is already a future bride, and they want to know what kind of princess she will be. She is trained to smile politely, curtsy just right, and answer questions with answers that sound elegant but reveal nothing. It's an early introduction to the art of medieval diplomacy, which is basically the art of saying something that sounds meaningful but conveys no actual political information. Her education deepens during this time. She learns estate management, how to oversee finances, order supplies, check accounts, and ensure servants are doing their duties. She learns healing, using herbs and simple remedies, because noblewomen often tended to the sick within their households. She learns religious responsibility, expected to lead prayers when needed or sponsor church events. And she learns court etiquette, which is less about politeness and more about navigating an aristocratic jungle full of smiling faces and hidden daggers. Sometimes she has hobbies. Maybe she loves music, spending hours practicing the harp until her fingers ache. Maybe she enjoys reading heroic tales or saintly legends. Maybe she secretly loves riding horses when she's allowed, feeling a rare moment of speed and wind that makes her feel alive in a way embroidery never could. Or maybe she enjoys sitting near the gardens, where flowers grow despite the stone walls and strict rules. Every princess finds small ways to carve out tiny spaces of joy inside the rigid structure of royal duty. But as she gets older, the world becomes more cautious around her, more controlled. She's rarely alone. She's rarely unobserved. Medieval parents believed daughters' reputations were fragile things, easily ruined by gossip or scandal. Even being seen speaking too warmly with a stable boy could ruin years of diplomatic planning, because a princess's value according to medieval logic depended heavily on the assumption that she was pure, obedient, and untouched by anything considered improper. So the castle becomes a stage where she must play her part perfectly. And then, one day, without ceremony, she learns the decision has been made for her. She is to be married. Maybe not immediately, sometimes the marriage isn't until she is 15 or 16, but the arrangement is finalized. A contract is drafted, gifts exchanged, oaths sworn between noble families. And she, the central figure in this huge political plan, is the last one told. Not because they don't care about her feelings, but because in the medieval worldview, her feelings are simply not part of the negotiation. She nods when they tell her. That's what's expected. She speaks politely. She acts as though she understands the weight of this decision. She tries to swallow the nervousness, maybe the fear that rises in her throat. She tries to imagine the person she's being sent to marry. Perhaps she's met him once. Perhaps she hasn't. It doesn't matter. Her life now belongs to a future she can't control. In the weeks leading up to her marriage, preparations consume everything. Her dowry is assembled: fine clothing, jewelry, land agreements, items meant to demonstrate her value. Seamstresses work tirelessly on her bridal garments. Priests discuss the ceremony. Nobles discuss politics. Servants clean and prepare rooms for traveling guests. The castle transforms into a buzzing machine of anticipation. She spends her days in a strange blend of excitement and dread. She wonders what her new home will be like. She wonders whether her husband will be kind or indifferent, gentle or strict. She wonders what her role will be in this new world. She wonders if she will be lonely. Because marriage doesn't just change her name, it removes her from everything she's ever known. Once she leaves her home, she rarely returns except for major events. The night before her departure is heavy with meaning. The castle is quiet. The halls echo softly. She lies in her bed, surrounded by familiar tapestries, familiar smells of burning tallow candles and wooden furniture, familiar whispers of servants moving quietly outside her door, and she knows everything is about to change. She's no longer just a princess of this castle. She will become part of another household, another dynasty, a symbolic bridge between two powerful families, a living treaty. And so, with the dawn, she rises. Attendants dress her in travel clothes. Her hair is braided long and meticulously. She is given a cloak embroidered with her family crest, her last identity as a daughter of this house. She walks to the courtyard where horses are saddled and carts loaded. Nobles gather to wish her farewell. Her parents embrace her in a way that is both loving and painfully distant. They tell her she will bring honor. They tell her this is her duty. They tell her they are proud. And she rides away from the only world she's ever known, toward a new life filled with expectations she didn't choose, responsibilities she didn't ask for, and a future she must shape with grace, intelligence, and all the strength a medieval princess could quietly wield. Because being born a princess in the Middle Ages was not just privilege. It was a lifelong performance, a careful balance of power and obedience, luxury and sacrifice, comfort and constraint. And now, as she enters the next chapter of her life, she carries all of that with her, and we continue exactly from here, in chunk 4. And she rides away from the only world she's ever known, toward a new life filled with expectations she didn't choose, responsibilities she didn't ask for, and a future she must shape with grace, intelligence, and all the strength a medieval princess could quietly wield. The castle recedes behind her, stone walls shrinking as the wheels of the cart clatter along the dirt road. She clutches the reins, feeling the horse beneath her, strong and steady, its warmth a small comfort in the chill morning air. Around her, attendants murmur instructions, nobles ride alongside, and servants carry luggage that seems far too heavy for any child to truly understand. The road ahead is long, and every mile carries her further from childhood, further from the familiar, deeper into the complex machinery of medieval politics. Her thoughts wander, though she rarely admits it to anyone. She wonders about her future home, the castle she will live in, the family she will join, the household she must eventually rule. Will the other women be kind? Will the servants recognize her authority without question? Will she like her husband? She doesn't know, and yet she already understands one thing. Her life is now intertwined with another family in ways she can undo. In her mind, she recites lessons she's learned in her childhood: how to remain composed, how to smile politely, how to listen without speaking, and she knows they will serve her in the days to come. The journey is slow. Medieval roads are rough, uneven, and sometimes muddy, depending on the weather. Horses stumble, wheels get stuck, and attendants scold each other quietly to maintain appearances. The princess herself sits upright, ankles crossed, hands neatly folded on her lap. Occasionally, a small smile or sigh escapes her, but mostly she stares at the passing countryside, fields stretching endlessly, dotted with peasants working their land, children running barefoot, animals grazing. She notices details: the way sunlight glints off a river, the smell of smoke from distant chimneys, the chirping of birds in hedgerows. These fleeting moments are the last remnants of a carefree childhood, small glimpses of freedom she will rarely experience again. By the time they reach the border of the new territory, the atmosphere changes. Noble guards and attendants of the welcoming family meet them. There are bows, greetings, murmured pleasantries, and more formalities than the princess has ever encountered in one day. She is presented with rooms prepared for her arrival, chambers adorned with tapestries, a bed with heavy curtains, tables arranged with fine food. It is meant to impress, to welcome, and to gently remind her of her elevated position. Yet she feels small, still learning to navigate this new world, acutely aware that every glance and gesture will be scrutinized. Even the air seems different, here less familiar, heavier with expectation, more rigid with the rules she must follow. Her first night in the new castle is quiet, though sleep does not come easily. She lies beneath heavy blankets, listening to unfamiliar sounds, the clatter of distant kitchens, the footsteps of servants she doesn't know, the faint murmur of voices through stone walls. She thinks about her parents, her former home, the life she left behind. She remembers her childhood nurse's lullabies, the soft sunlight in her nursery, the gentle warmth of the hearth. And yet, she also knows that nostalgia alone cannot change her circumstances. She must learn to adapt, to become the princess this new family requires, the one who will forge alliances and maintain the fragile balance of noble life. Morning brings new lessons in protocol. She is guided through the halls by attendants, learning the precise placement of each hand and foot, the tone of voice expected in greetings, the bow for each rank of visitor. She observes her new household, the ladies-in-waiting, the stewards, the guards, the cooks, each performing their role with practiced precision. She is reminded constantly that her role is not to command immediately, but to understand, to absorb, to anticipate. Even her meals are lessons: how to hold utensils, how to eat slowly, how to make polite conversation without revealing her true thoughts. It is exhausting, and yet she begins to realize that mastery of these small details is the key to her survival and influence. Education continues, now more specialized. Tutors arrive to teach her about the history of this new land, its families, its alliances, and rivalries. She learns the genealogy of every noble family within reach, the political implications of marriages, births, and deaths. Her lessons are a mixture of memorization and strategy, preparing her for a life where a single word, a single gesture, or even a misstep could alter the balance of power. In the afternoons, she practices music and embroidery, skills considered essential to a well-rounded noblewoman. Every task is both instruction and discipline, a way of shaping her into the ideal figure, poised, capable, and predictable in a world where predictability is power. The first encounters with her future husband are formal, brief, and highly orchestrated. She observes him from a distance, noting his mannerisms, the sound of his voice, the subtle gestures that reveal his personality. They exchange carefully measured words, smiles, and bows. There is curiosity, perhaps, but also caution. Both are aware that their lives are intertwined not just by affection but by duty. In these early interactions, she learns one of the most critical lessons of a medieval princess. Appearances matter more than feelings. The future she is entering depends on the perception of others as much as her own actions. Days pass in a rhythm both demanding and exhausting. She attends council meetings as an observer, listens to discussions of land disputes, taxation, military concerns, and alliances. She practices embroidery for hours, each stitch a reminder of precision, patience, and the symbolism of her work. She studies languages, philosophy, and the arts, because knowledge is both armor and currency in noble society. And at night, she retires to her chambers, exhausted but mindful of the need to rest in order to face the next day's challenges. Sleep comes slowly, filled with dreams of her past life and tentative imaginings of the future. She begins to understand subtle social dynamics. A glance exchanged between two ladies-in-waiting may indicate rivalry or support. A word spoken softly by a steward might hint at political tension. She observes courtiers, noticing which alliances seem secure and which are fragile. It is a world of codes, gestures, and unspoken rules, where even laughter is moderated to convey the correct impression. She begins to practice discretion, learning when to speak and when to remain silent, how to nod appropriately, how to smile politely. and how to respond in a manner that maintains her position and dignity. Despite the constant observation and training, she finds brief moments of pleasure. A walk in the gardens, where the scent of roses and herbs provides a small reprieve from the rigidity of the castle walls. A song practiced quietly on her harp when no one is watching. A fleeting conversation with a trusted lady in waiting, sharing whispered stories or secrets. These moments are tiny but essential, a reminder that beneath the carefully crafted persona of the princess, there is still a young woman capable of thought, feeling, and wonder. As months pass, she begins to take on greater responsibilities within the household. She assists in managing servants, supervising the organization of rooms, and ensuring that events run smoothly. She observes the management of the estate's finances, gaining a practical understanding of resources and labor. These duties are not yet hers to command fully, but they provide training for a future where she will be expected to oversee entire households, manage estates, and represent her family with authority and decorum. Each task, no matter how small, is a lesson in leadership, patience, and the subtle exercise of influence. Her interactions with her future husband become more structured. Lessons in etiquette, conversation, and shared activities are designed to foster familiarity and mutual respect. They may practice hunting, falconry, or riding together, activities that are both leisure and instruction. She learns to observe his reactions, to measure the tone of his voice, to anticipate the needs of others. Slowly, she becomes more confident in navigating this new environment, though she remains acutely aware that every action is scrutinized and every choice carries consequence. The princess's life is a delicate balance of control and constraint, of privilege and responsibility. She experiences moments of joy and curiosity, but always within boundaries. Freedom is measured, spontaneity limited, and her identity is constantly shaped by the expectations of others. Yet within this framework, she discovers her resilience. She learns to find pleasure in small victories, a conversation conducted with tact, a musical piece mastered, a strategic observation made without error. Each success strengthens her confidence and her ability to navigate the complex social world she inhabits. By now, she understands that being a princess in the Middle Ages is not just about luxury or comfort. It is about survival, strategy, and influence. It is about learning to inhabit a role that is both visible and scrutinized, to act with decorum while subtly shaping events from within. It is a life where every gesture, every word, and every stitch carries significance. And through this understanding, she begins to find a sense of agency, even within the strict limitations imposed by her position. Even as she adapts to her new life, she remembers the lessons of her early childhood. The lullabies, the warmth of her first home, the quiet moments by the hearth, and the small joys that sustained her through infancy and early childhood. These memories become a source of strength, grounding her in a world where appearances often overshadow substance. They remind her that beneath the layers of responsibility and expectation, she remains a young woman with dreams, hopes, and a capacity for joy. And so, the princess continues to grow, to learn, and to adapt. Each day brings new challenges and new opportunities, small victories, and careful navigation of complex social landscapes. She becomes ever more aware of her role, not just as a daughter or a bride, but as a symbol, a diplomat, and a potential leader. Her life, shaped from birth, is now a living demonstration of the intricate balance of privilege, duty, and restraint that defines the existence of a medieval princess. And so, the princess continues to grow, to learn, and to adapt. Each day brings new challenges and new opportunities, small victories, and careful navigation of complex social landscapes. She becomes ever more aware of her role, not just as a daughter or a bride, but as a symbol, a diplomat, and a potential leader. Her life, shaped from birth, is now a living demonstration of the intricate balance of privilege, duty, and restraint that defines the existence of a medieval princess. And yet, even within this world of expectations and constant scrutiny, she finds moments of quiet reflection, when the weight of crowns, contracts, and ceremonies lifts ever so slightly. In these moments, she allows herself to remember what it feels like to simply be a child. She recalls the sunlight slipping through her nursery window, the smell of freshly baked bread in her family kitchen, the gentle rocking of her cradle, the soft lullabies sung by her nurse. These memories are like threads of warmth woven into her consciousness, small comforts she can carry with her through the relentless demands of her daily life. They remind her that beneath the robes, the embroidery, the endless lessons, and the careful gestures, she is still a young woman capable of thought, emotion, and imagination. As she enters her mid-teens, her training intensifies. Etiquette lessons become more nuanced, involving subtle gestures, appropriate responses to different ranks, and the management of complex social situations. She is taught to navigate conversations with visiting nobles, to measure the tone of her voice, and to read expressions that indicate hidden intentions. These skills are not just formalities, they are survival tools, in a world where a single misstep could affect not only her own reputation, but the alliances and power dynamics of entire kingdoms. And though these lessons are rigorous, they also provide her with a growing sense of control over the small, yet critical, areas of her life. Her academic studies are equally demanding. She delves into history, religion, and philosophy, learning the stories of rulers, saints, and scholars. These lessons are not purely intellectual. They are practical guides for understanding the world she now inhabits. She learns the importance of alliances, the delicate balance of power, and the ways in which knowledge can serve as both shield and sword. Every story, every text, and every discussion is a lesson in navigating the responsibilities that accompany her birthright. Physical training also becomes part of her routine. She practices horseback riding, falconry, and sometimes archery. These activities are framed as preparation for the responsibilities of adulthood, but they also offer fleeting moments of freedom and exhilaration. When she rides through the castle grounds or the nearby forests, wind in her hair, sunlight flickering through the trees, she feels a rare sense of agency and power. These moments remind her that even within the constraints of her life, there are spaces where she can feel alive, confident, and strong. They become cherished memories, private victories that she alone fully appreciates. Her relationship with her future husband grows more formal, more structured, yet also more familiar over time. They practice shared skills dancing for courtly occasions, riding for ceremonial purposes, and attending religious services together. Each interaction is carefully observed and guided by their attendants, who ensure that the young couple learns not only etiquette but also mutual respect. She begins to notice subtle patterns, the way he responds under pressure, the expressions that indicate thoughtfulness or irritation, the gestures that reveal character. She observes him as part of her education, as an essential component of the alliance that has been planned for her since birth. At the same time, she begins to cultivate relationships with other members of the household, ladies-in-waiting, stewards, tutors, and attendants. These individuals are her companions, mentors, and sometimes her only confidants. Through these relationships, she learns the intricate network of influence that underlies the household. She observes loyalty, rivalry, kindness, and deceit, gradually understanding how to navigate these dynamics with tact. Even in this carefully regulated environment, she finds ways to assert subtle influence, gently steering situations without attracting attention to herself. These early experiences lay the foundation for her future role as a leader and diplomat. Her daily routine becomes a rhythm of precision. Morning lessons are followed by practice in music, needlework, or languages. Afternoons are spent in observation, social training, or overseeing aspects of the household. Evenings involve reflection, prayer, or supervised leisure. Every action is measured, every gesture intentional, and every word carefully considered. Yet within this rhythm, she discovers a growing sense of mastery. She begins to feel the power of knowledge, observation, and discipline, not the raw, chaotic power of freedom, but a quiet, calculated power that allows her to navigate her world effectively. This is the subtle art of medieval princehood: control within constraint, influence within expectation, and resilience within limitation. Despite the rigidity of her life, she continues to seek small pleasures. Perhaps she hides in the gardens to watch the birds or smell the flowers. Perhaps she sneaks time with a favorite book or practices music in a quiet corner. These moments of personal indulgence are essential for her well-being, offering a sense of individuality that contrasts with the highly curated persona required of her in public. She learns to cherish these private experiences, understanding that even in a life designed for others, there are spaces where she can exist on her own terms. Her relationship with her parents, though now largely symbolic, continues to shape her sense of identity. Letters, occasional visits, and carefully orchestrated meetings remind her of her lineage, the privileges it affords, and the expectations it imposes. They reinforce the idea that she is both a cherished daughter and a tool of political strategy. She absorbs these lessons, internalizing the duality of love and duty, and learns to reconcile the affection she feels with the obligations that define her existence. As her 16th birthday approaches, preparations for her marriage accelerate. The household is busy with arrangements, ceremonial attire, religious preparations, gifts, travel plans, and formal announcements. She is reminded constantly of her role in securing alliances and maintaining the honor of her family. Yet amid these preparations, she experiences moments of reflection, contemplating the life she is leaving behind and the future she is about to enter. She feels anticipation, fear, curiosity, and a sense of inevitability that comes with a life so carefully orchestrated from the moment of her birth. Finally, the day arrives. She dons her finest garments, carefully layered and embroidered, her hair arranged in intricate braids adorned with jewels and ribbons. She walks with attendants, courtiers, and guards to the place where her journey into adulthood will formally begin. She greets relatives, nobility, and guests with the perfect combination of humility and grace. Knowing that her composure reflects on the reputation of her entire family, every word, every gesture, every smile is scrutinized. And yet, she moves with a quiet confidence, aware that she has been trained for this moment her entire life. The ceremony itself is grand, a display of power, wealth, and diplomacy. Clergy perform the rituals, nobles observe the proceedings, and witnesses record every detail. She recites vows, performs ceremonial gestures, and participates in traditions that symbolize the joining of two families and the continuation of dynastic alliances. Throughout it all, she feels the weight of centuries of expectations, the collective gaze of generations, and the awareness that her role is both personal and symbolic. It is a moment of transition, not only from childhood to adulthood, but also from daughter to wife, from observer to participant in the complex dance of noble politics. After the ceremony, she settles into her new household. The routines, lessons, and social dynamics continue, now in a different setting with new responsibilities. She navigates her new environment with the skills she has developed over a lifetime: observation, discipline, tact, and the ability to find moments of personal pleasure amid duty. She continues to learn, to adapt, and to assert subtle influence, understanding that the life of a medieval princess is not defined solely by wealth or status, but by the ability to navigate complexity with grace and intelligence. Even in adulthood, she carries with her the lessons of her childhood, the importance of composure, the value of observation, the power of knowledge, and the resilience developed through years of careful instruction. She understands that her influence extends beyond ceremonial appearances and social etiquette. It encompasses the management of households, the cultivation of alliances, and the subtle exercise of diplomacy that shapes the fate of kingdoms. Her life is a testament to the intricate balance of privilege, duty, and personal agency that defines the existence of a medieval princess. And though she now inhabits a world filled with expectations, responsibilities, and constant observation, she also knows that within her lies the capacity for joy, creativity, and personal growth. She continues to find small moments of freedom, pleasure, and self-expression, cherishing the private victories that define her humanity. In this way, the life of a medieval princess is a delicate interplay between constraint and opportunity, expectation and individuality, duty and desire. It is a life carefully shaped from birth, yet one that allows for resilience, adaptation, and subtle forms of self-determination. And though she now inhabits a world filled with expectations, responsibilities, and constant observation, she also knows that within her lies the capacity for joy, creativity, and personal growth. She continues to find small moments of freedom, pleasure, and self-expression, cherishing the private victories that define her humanity. In this way, the life of a medieval princess is a delicate interplay between constraint and opportunity, expectation and individuality, duty and desire. It is a life carefully shaped from birth, yet one that allows for resilience, adaptation, and subtle forms of self-determination. And as the seasons turn, she begins to understand more deeply the power of influence, both visible and invisible, and the ways in which her position shapes the lives of those around her. The castle itself becomes a kind of living classroom, teaching lessons not only through instruction but through observation. She watches the interaction between servants, noting how loyalty is rewarded and mistakes punished. She observes her husband's household, recognizing patterns of behavior that reveal priorities, alliances, and potential conflicts. She sees the ways in which minor gestures, an extra bow here, a whispered comment there, carry weight far beyond their apparent simplicity. Slowly, she internalizes these lessons, understanding that a princess's power is often subtle, exercised through observation, tact, and careful timing rather than overt command. She also learns the rhythms of the household economy. She observes the preparation and storage of food, the management of resources, the planning of events, and the maintenance of the estate. These are lessons in practicality and foresight, reminding her that even a life of privilege is sustained by careful attention to detail and the labor of many people. Understanding these mechanics gives her a sense of control and competence, even in a world defined by strict social hierarchies and expectations. Religious practice continues to play a central role in her life. She attends daily prayers, participates in ceremonies, and is educated in theology and doctrine. Religious devotion is not merely personal. It is a demonstration of moral character and legitimacy. A princess's piety is both symbolic and practical, signaling her virtue to allies, neighbors, and her own household. Through ritual, she learns discipline, patience, and the ability to perform duties regardless of personal inclination. And though some practices feel repetitive or burdensome, she finds moments of solace in quiet prayer, meditation, and reflection, where she can center herself amidst the whirlwind of responsibilities. Social interactions are equally complex. Courtiers, nobles, and visiting dignitaries constantly evaluate her behavior, appearance, and demeanor. She practices subtle diplomacy in conversations, learning to respond in ways that preserve both her personal dignity and the honor of her family. She observes alliances being negotiated, rivalries simmering beneath polite smiles, and the delicate management of influence among the household and the court. Through these experiences, she develops a keen understanding of human behavior, intuition, and strategic thinking, skills that are as essential as any formal lesson in reading, writing, or music. Her relationship with her future husband continues to evolve. Moments of shared activity, riding, hunting, music, or religious observance become opportunities to understand his character, gauge his temperament, and establish mutual respect. While affection is not the central purpose of their interactions, it emerges subtly, woven into acts of shared effort, mutual attention, and quiet understanding. The young princess realizes that partnership, even in a politically arranged marriage, requires negotiation, observation, and the careful cultivation of rapport. Despite the structured and demanding nature of her life, she begins to recognize the value of leisure. Reading stories, playing with music, sketching, or observing the natural world becomes a form of respite. These moments, though brief, provide a sense of autonomy and personal identity. Even in a world that prescribes her every action, she discovers small ways to assert her individuality, cultivating interests, hobbies, and relationships that belong to her alone. This self-awareness becomes a quiet strength, an internal resource she carries into adulthood and the challenges that accompany her station. The social fabric of her world is also a source of learning. She observes the ways in which households interact, how servants manage their own hierarchies, and how alliances within the noble class are constantly maintained and renegotiated. She notices the subtleties of etiquette, how a misplaced gesture, a tone of voice, or a glance can have lasting consequences. Through this observation, she develops both patience and discernment, understanding that power is not only wielded through authority, but through perception, subtle influence, and the careful management of relationships. Her responsibilities in managing household affairs increase gradually. She participates in supervising servants, overseeing the preparation of meals, ensuring the maintenance of rooms, and observing the organization of events. Each task is both a practical lesson and a demonstration of her ability to lead and influence. Through these experiences, she gains confidence in her capacity to manage complex systems and the people within them, an essential preparation for her eventual role as a fully empowered noblewoman and potential ruler. As she approaches her late teens, the pressures of societal expectations intensify. The discussion of heirs, inheritance, and succession becomes more prominent. The need to maintain personal decorum, manage relationships, and navigate complex political landscapes weighs heavily. Yet, These pressures also provide opportunities for subtle agency. She learns to anticipate events, influence discussions quietly, and employ the lessons of diplomacy and discretion that have been cultivated throughout her childhood and adolescence. In this way, constraint becomes a teacher, shaping her judgment, strategy, and awareness of human nature. Her understanding of influence deepens as she observes the wider world beyond the castle walls. Markets, towns, and traveling merchants provide glimpses of social realities outside the noble household. Peasant labor, trade, and local customs reveal the interdependence between nobility and the broader population. Through careful observation, she begins to comprehend the broader societal systems that underpin her life of privilege, giving her insights that few young noblewomen possess. This awareness enhances both her intelligence and her empathy, enriching her ability to navigate both her private and public roles. Even as her responsibilities grow, she maintains the lessons of restraint learned in childhood: patience, composure, and measured speech. She understands that impulsive action or excessive emotion can undermine her authority and the respect of her household. She internalizes the wisdom of subtle influence, that listening carefully, observing meticulously, and acting strategically often achieves more than overt displays of power. In this way, she becomes both a participant in and an observer of her world, balancing personal insight with societal expectation. The juxtaposition of constraint and freedom continues to define her experience. While her movements, words, and actions are heavily guided by protocol, she discovers spaces where she can exercise choice. She chooses how to spend quiet moments, what interests to pursue, and which relationships to cultivate. These choices, though small, are meaningful, providing a sense of control and autonomy in a life largely shaped by others. They become vital to her well-being and sense of self, sustaining her through the rigors of daily life and the demands of her station. Her reflection on personal identity grows more complex. She understands that being a princess is not simply a matter of birthright. It is a continuous performance, a combination of learned behavior, strategic observation, and subtle influence. She realizes that while her circumstances are largely determined by the world around her, her responses, choices, and internal reflections are her own. This insight provides a quiet empowerment, an understanding that even within the strictures of medieval society, personal agency exists in nuanced and meaningful ways. As she matures, she develops a sense of purpose rooted in both duty and personal growth. She recognizes the importance of her position not merely as a symbol, but as a tool to effect influence, maintain harmony, and safeguard her family's legacy. She understands that her actions, decisions, and comportment contribute to the stability of households, alliances, and even entire regions. This awareness shapes her identity, merging personal growth with societal responsibility, and forging a path of resilience, intelligence, and careful leadership. Through it all, she never forgets the small joys that sustain her spirit. Music, literature, moments of solitude, conversations with trusted companions, and observations of the natural world provide solace, pleasure, and creative inspiration. These experiences remind her that beneath the trappings of royalty, ceremony, and political strategy, she remains a human being capable of wonder, curiosity, and emotional depth. They offer balance to the demands of her station, ensuring that she grows not only in knowledge and skill, but also in wisdom and self. And so, the medieval princess continues her journey, navigating a life of privilege and constraint, of expectation and subtle influence, of observation and action. Each day brings new lessons, new opportunities, and new challenges, shaping her into a figure capable of grace, intelligence, and resilience. Through discipline, observation, and careful cultivation of personal and political skills, she prepares not only to fulfill her role, but to shape it, subtly steering events and relationships in ways that reflect both her education and her character. In this delicate balance, she embodies the essence of what it truly meant to be a princess in the Middle Ages. And so, the medieval princess continues her journey, navigating a life of privilege and constraint, of expectation and subtle influence, of observation and action. Every day becomes an exercise in patience, intelligence, and adaptability, and though her surroundings are beautiful, ornate, and filled with luxury, she begins to realize that these privileges come with invisible chains. The castle, the tapestries, the fine silk sole, are symbols of status, power, and responsibility. They are not mere decorations, but constant reminders that she must perform, observe, and embody the ideals of nobility at all times. And yet, she grows more adept at this performance, finding quiet satisfaction in mastering the intricate dance of social expectation. Her mornings are still regimented, beginning with the soft light of dawn filtering through heavy curtains. She rises, assisted by attendants who carefully braid her hair and help her into layered garments embroidered with the family crest. The process is both ceremonial and practical. It signals her status to anyone who sees her, while also ensuring she maintains a proper posture and appearance throughout the day. As she dresses, she reflects on the lessons she has learned since childhood: composure, patience, tact, observation, and the subtle exertion of influence. These are the skills that define her life, far more than the luxury she inhabits. Breakfast is quiet, often consisting of bread, cheese, porridge, and watered wine. She eats slowly, aware that her mannerisms are being watched. Even during the simplest meals, courtiers and attendants may be present, taking note of the way she holds herself, the cadence of her speech, the expression on her face. Every detail is recorded in their minds as part of the subtle map of her social persona. She has learned to move gracefully through these moments, to appear serene and attentive, even when her thoughts wander, and to maintain a calm exterior, regardless of her inner feelings. Education, as it always has been, dominates her mornings. She practices languages, reading and writing, often learning multiple dialects to prepare for correspondence and diplomacy. Her tutors are strict, expecting memorization, repetition, and precision. She also studies history and politics, not as abstract knowledge but as practical guidance for navigating the complexities of noble life. She learns the alliances, disputes, and strategies that have shaped neighboring kingdoms and the broader region. Every lesson reinforces her understanding that power is rarely wielded through force alone. It is observed, negotiated, and subtly maintained, often through words, gestures, and perception. Music and the arts remain integral to her development. She practices the harp, the lute, or the psaltery, mastering pieces that are both technically demanding and socially meaningful. Music is a way to display refinement, intelligence, and patience, all qualities expected of a noblewoman. Yet it also offers moments of personal expression. In the quiet of her chambers, when no one is watching, she allows herself to play freely, improvising, exploring the textures of sound, and finding small, private joy in the notes that escape from her instrument. These moments become sacred, a way to maintain a sense of self amid the constant obligations that define her life. Her afternoons often involve observation and practice in household management. She oversees servants, ensuring that the preparation of food, maintenance of rooms, and organization of events proceed smoothly. These tasks are not performed out of necessity. She could rely entirely on her staff, but as training in leadership, responsibility, and foresight. Each decision, even minor, carries lessons about human behavior, the consequences of action or inaction, and the intricate web of authority that sustains the household. Through this, she gains confidence in her ability to influence and manage, even in subtle ways. Religious observance continues to shape her daily life. She participates in prayers, masses, and ceremonies, learning the liturgy, the rituals, and the significance behind every gesture. Piety is both personal and political. It signals virtue to allies, legitimacy to peers, and moral authority to those under her influence. Even when she feels fatigue or distraction, she maintains the outward appearance of devotion, recognizing that her behavior is constantly observed and interpreted by others. Through this disciplined practice, she cultivates inner strength, composure, and a sense of purpose that extends beyond herself. Social interactions remain complex. She navigates the subtleties of courtly life, observing courtiers, attendants, and visiting dignitaries. She notices alliances forming through gestures, whispers, and subtle hierarchies. She learns to listen carefully, to discern the underlying motivations behind words and actions, and to respond with precision. Even laughter is tempered to convey the correct meaning, balancing warmth with decorum. Over time, she develops an intuition that guides her choices, allowing her to maintain influence while appearing deferential and graceful. Her relationship with her husband evolves gradually. Shared activities such as hunting, riding, music, or religious observance become opportunities to understand his character, temperament, and priorities. Through careful observation, she learns how to anticipate his responses, manage disagreements, and foster respect. While affection may develop naturally over time, the foundation of their relationship is strategy, mutual observation, and the exercise of influence. She begins to understand that partnership in this context is both personal and political, requiring a delicate balance between intimacy and propriety. Travel is an occasional part of her life, either to visit other noble houses, attend religious sites, or oversee estates. These journeys are opportunities for observation, learning, and subtle diplomacy. She witnesses the diversity of landscapes, the workings of towns and villages, and the lives of people outside her immediate household. These experiences expand her understanding of the world, reinforcing lessons in humility, responsibility, and the interdependence of different social classes. Even brief excursions provide a sense of freedom and a chance to apply her growing knowledge and skills in new contexts. Her reflections deepen as she matures. She considers the nature of her influence, the responsibilities she bears, and the ways in which her life is intertwined with the fates of others. She recognizes that her position is both a privilege and a burden, offering comfort, security, and status, while demanding constant attention, restraint, and strategic awareness. This duality shapes her identity, blending personal growth with social responsibility, and cultivating resilience, intelligence, and discernment. Friendships and alliances within the household become increasingly significant. Trusted companions provide guidance, support, and shared understanding. She observes their interactions, noting loyalty, ambition, and subtle social cues. These relationships are carefully managed, as missteps could have political repercussions. She learns to navigate trust and suspicion, developing the ability to maintain alliances while protecting her own interests. Through these interactions, she refines her understanding of human behavior, influence, and the art of social negotiation. Even in the midst of these responsibilities, she maintains private rituals that sustain her spirit. Music, reading, journaling, and solitary walks provide respite, reflection, and personal satisfaction. These moments are essential for maintaining a sense of identity and autonomy within a highly regulated life. They allow her to cultivate creativity, thought, and emotional depth, balancing the outward performance of duty with the inward preservation of self. Over time, she recognizes the importance of these private experiences, understanding that they contribute to her resilience, wisdom, and overall effectiveness as a noblewoman. Her maturity is also reflected in her awareness of succession and inheritance. She observes discussions about heirs, property, and the continuity of her family's influence. She learns to consider the long-term implications of actions, decisions, and relationships. This awareness informs her behavior, guiding her in the careful management of both personal and household affairs. She begins to see the interconnectedness of all aspects of her life, understanding that her actions ripple outward, affecting both immediate and distant spheres of influence. Through observation, practice, and reflection, she develops a sophisticated understanding of power and authority. She recognizes that leadership is often subtle, exercised through perception, tact, and the careful management of relationships. She understands that influence is built on observation, intelligence, and measured action, rather than brute force or overt displays of dominance. These lessons, cultivated over years of disciplined training and lived experience, prepare her for the nuanced responsibilities of adult life as a noblewoman, diplomat, and symbol of her family's legacy. Even as she navigates these complexities, she never loses sight of the personal joys and curiosities that sustain her. Music, literature, natural observation, and creative expression remain vital to her sense of self. These activities provide a refuge from the demands of her station, allowing her to explore, reflect, and cultivate individuality within the boundaries imposed by her role. They are a reminder that even in a life defined by duty and expectation, moments of personal satisfaction and self-expression are possible, meaningful, and essential. And so, the medieval princess continues her journey, balancing duty and desire, observation and action, constraint and subtle influence. Each day, she grows in knowledge, skill, and understanding, refining the abilities necessary to navigate a world of complexity, expectation, and constant scrutiny. Her life is a continuous interplay between privilege and responsibility, performance and authenticity, guidance and autonomy. In this intricate dance, she embodies the essence of what it truly meant to be a princess in the Middle Ages: disciplined, observant, strategic, and quietly resilient. And so, the medieval princess continues her journey, balancing duty and desire, observation and action, constraint and subtle influence. Each day becomes a study in resilience, in strategy, in the quiet art of maintaining her position while nurturing her mind and spirit. Even as she fulfills her obligations, she notices the delicate interplay between appearance and reality, between what is expected and what is possible. Life, she realizes, is not simply lived, it is carefully performed, and mastery of performance is one of the most important lessons she has learned since birth. She begins to understand the rhythms of power and influence within the household more profoundly. The stewards, attendants, and servants all hold their own forms of subtle authority. Observing them teaches her that leadership is not always about issuing commands. Sometimes it is about listening, observing, and allowing events to unfold with calculated intervention. She notices which servants command respect through competence, which courtiers are persuasive through charm, and which alliances among the household staff influence the smooth functioning of daily life. Each observation becomes a lesson, a thread in the intricate tapestry of noble life that she is learning to weave with care. The princess's mornings remain structured, though she begins to develop her own small rituals. Rising at dawn, she moves through her daily preparation with practiced precision, dressing in carefully layered garments and arranging her hair with the assistance of her attendants. Yet within these rituals, she finds moments of personal reflection, a quiet time to gather her thoughts, recall her lessons, and consider the challenges ahead. She has learned that control over her own mind, her patience, focus, and clarity is as crucial as control over her outward appearance. Education continues to expand her understanding of the broader world. Tutors provide lessons not only in languages and literature, but also in philosophy, theology, and law. She learns the stories of rulers and dynasties, the moral and political lessons embedded in history, and the principles of governance and justice. These studies are both practical and symbolic. Knowledge is a tool that allows her to navigate complex social landscapes, and it also signals to others that she is a capable and intelligent participant in the affairs of her household and beyond. She practices critical thinking, weighing evidence, predicting outcomes, and assessing character skills that are subtle yet indispensable in her future role. Music and the arts continue to offer her personal solace. She practices the harp, lute, or psaltery, sometimes alone in a quiet chamber, sometimes in the presence of tutors or companions. Music is both refinement and therapy, a way to cultivate dexterity, patience, and focus, while also providing a channel for emotional expression. She experiments with composition, improvisation, and interpretation, discovering the subtle ways in which music can convey feeling without words. These experiences reinforce her sense of identity, a private domain where her creativity and thoughtfulness flourish amidst the structured demands of noble life. The household remains a microcosm of society at large, teaching lessons in diplomacy, hierarchy, and subtle influence. She observes the interactions among stewards, cooks, guards, and courtiers, noting alliances, rivalries, and patterns of behavior. Even the smallest gestures, a glance, a nod, a carefully chosen phrase, carry meaning. She practices reading these signals, responding with precision, and influencing events without attracting undue attention. Through these exercises, she hones her awareness, judgment, and patience, understanding that true influence often lies in subtle, unseen actions. Her relationship with her husband deepens with time. Shared activities, formal duties, and occasional private conversation allow her to observe his character more fully. She notices strengths, weaknesses, tendencies, and preferences. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to practice diplomacy and mutual understanding. While affection is not immediate, it develops gradually through shared experience, mutual respect, and the careful balance of personal and political considerations. She learns that partnership is a skill to be cultivated as much as a bond to be felt. Travel continues to play a role in her education. Visits to neighboring estates, towns, and religious sites expose her to different social structures, local customs, and economic realities. She observes how markets function, how peasants interact with authority, and how different regions manage resources and governance. These experiences broaden her understanding of the interconnectedness of social hierarchies and the importance of observation, patience, and strategy in navigating diverse human contexts. She begins to see the consequences of policy, the intricacies of trade, and the subtle influences of reputation on power. Even as she grows in maturity, her personal pleasures remain vital. Reading, music, journaling, and quiet walks provide space for reflection and personal growth. She appreciates the small victories of self-expression, completing a difficult composition, mastering a passage of poetry, or noticing a rare bloom in the garden. These experiences anchor her sense of self, reminding her that beneath the duties and expectations lies a human being capable of thought, creativity, and quiet joy. They are moments of freedom within a life otherwise defined by structure. Social observation continues to sharpen her understanding of power dynamics. She notices which courtiers wield influence through charm, knowledge, or subtle manipulation. She observes servants who command respect quietly through competence and reliability. She practices responding to situations with measured tact, learning when to speak, when to act, and when to remain silent. Each day becomes a lesson in human behavior, strategy, and the management of perception, essential skills for her future as a leader and mediator. Her responsibilities in household management grow. She oversees events, monitors resources, and ensures the well-being of her attendants. These tasks provide practical experience in administration and leadership, reinforcing lessons in accountability, foresight, and influence. Even as she carries out these duties, she continues to observe, reflect, and refine her strategies. Understanding that success in noble life depends on subtle mastery of systems and relationships as much as formal authority. Religion remains central. She participates in daily prayers, ceremonies, and ritual observances, internalizing their moral and symbolic significance. Piety reinforces her credibility, virtue, and moral authority within the household and the wider community. Even in moments of fatigue or distraction, she maintains composure and outward devotion, understanding that her behavior is constantly observed. Through these practices, she cultivates patience, discipline, and resilience, qualities that enhance her ability to navigate complex social and political realities. Her interactions with peers, companions, and attendants deepen her understanding of trust, loyalty, and subtle negotiation. She learns to cultivate alliances carefully, maintain discretion, and protect her interests without overt confrontation. These lessons are both practical and psychological, shaping her judgment, perception, and ability to influence events indirectly. Friendships, though sometimes constrained by obligation, provide opportunities for support, shared knowledge, and mutual understanding. The awareness of succession, inheritance, and political responsibility grows stronger. She observes the long-term consequences of decisions made by her family and others, learning the importance of strategic thinking, foresight, and the careful management of relationships. She understands that her position carries responsibilities that extend far beyond personal concerns, influencing the stability, prosperity, and alliances of entire regions. This awareness guides her behavior, reinforcing patience, composure, and strategic thinking. Even amid these responsibilities, she continues to cherish private moments of creativity, reflection, and exploration. Music, reading, journaling, and observation of the natural world provide essential respite, reinforcing her sense of identity and personal autonomy. These experiences allow her to cultivate wisdom, resilience, and subtle influence, reminding her that even in a life constrained by duty and expectation, she can maintain agency, thoughtfulness, and emotional depth. And so, the princess moves forward in her life, skillfully balancing obligation, observation, influence, and personal growth. Each day offers new lessons in diplomacy, leadership, and human behavior, reinforcing the delicate art of navigating power, perception, and relationships. Her existence is both structured and fluid, disciplined yet adaptable, constrained yet capable of subtle exertion of agency. Through patience, observation, and cultivated skill, she embodies the essence of what it truly meant to live as a princess in the Middle Ages, poised, knowledgeable, resilient, and quietly powerful. And so, the princess moves forward in her life, skillfully balancing obligation, observation, influence, and personal growth. Each day offers new lessons in diplomacy, leadership, and human behavior, reinforcing the delicate art of navigating power, perception, and relationships. Her existence is both structured and fluid, disciplined yet adaptable, constrained yet capable of subtle exertion of agency. Through patience, observation, and cultivated skill, she embodies the essence of what it truly meant to live as a princess in the Middle Ages, poised, knowledgeable, resilient, and quietly powerful. Yet even as she masters these visible aspects of her life, she begins to explore the subtler dimensions of influence, the hidden powers that exist behind the grand halls and ceremonial gestures, powers that are whispered, observed, and acted upon with discretion. One of the lessons she learns early in adulthood is the quiet art of persuasion. Words, tone, and expression are tools, and their proper use can sway opinion, mitigate conflict, and foster cooperation. She notices the subtle differences in the way men and women of power communicate, observing which phrases calm tensions and which spark rivalry. Through careful listening and observation, she begins to understand the unspoken rules that govern negotiation and influence, realizing that her ability to act strategically often matters more than her wealth or title. This understanding becomes one of her most valuable assets, a skill refined over years of careful attention. Her education in social dynamics extends to reading intentions and emotions. She notices the smallest of gestures, a hesitant bow, a fleeting frown, or a particular choice of words. Each detail provides insight into motivations and alliances, revealing loyalties and tensions that are otherwise invisible. She practices patience, waiting for moments when subtle intervention can redirect outcomes favorably. It is a form of quiet power, one that requires discretion, timing, and awareness. The princess comes to value these unseen influences as much as formal authority, understanding that the world of nobility often rewards subtle intelligence more than ostentation. Daily life continues to offer structured learning opportunities. Morning lessons, household supervision, and personal study provide routines of discipline. Music and artistic expression offer respite and personal enrichment. Religious observance provides moral grounding and reinforces social expectations. Each activity contributes to the cultivation of patience, precision, and resilience. She becomes aware that even leisure is a form of training, practicing focus, endurance, and creativity within carefully managed boundaries. In this way, the routine of noble life becomes a school of thought, character, and strategic development. The management of her household grows in complexity. She oversees the scheduling of servants, coordinates domestic tasks, and ensures the smooth execution of ceremonies and events. Each task reinforces lessons in leadership, foresight, and interpersonal awareness. Through these duties, she learns to anticipate challenges, manage resources, and maintain order without asserting overt dominance. It is a delicate balance of authority and subtle guidance, a preparation for the larger responsibilities she will inherit as a key figure in her family and court. Each small success strengthens her confidence and refines her judgment. Her interactions with other nobles, both within her household and beyond, become arenas for practicing diplomacy. She learns the nuanced etiquette required to maintain alliances, foster goodwill, and mitigate conflicts. Conversations are measured. Gestures, tone, and posture are carefully calibrated. She observes how influence is exercised indirectly, how social networks operate, and how alliances can shift with the slightest change in perception. Through these experiences, she develops strategic thinking, empathy, and a keen sense of timing, skills that are essential in navigating the delicate political landscape of her world. Even amidst these responsibilities, she cherishes moments of private reflection. Quiet walks in the gardens, solitary musical practice, reading, and journaling provide essential opportunities for self-expression and intellectual growth. These private rituals are spaces where she can process her experiences, explore her thoughts, and sustain her sense of individuality. They become essential to her well-being, reinforcing her ability to navigate public life with clarity and composure. In this way, she maintains a sense of self even within the strictures of her role, balancing personal needs with public expectation. Her relationship with her husband continues to evolve, blending formal duties with personal observation. Shared activities, careful conversation, and attention to mutual priorities allow her to gauge his character, temperament, and goals. She learns to anticipate his decisions, manage disagreements subtly, and cultivate mutual respect. Affection, though not the primary foundation of their union, grows gradually through shared experience and understanding. She realizes that a successful partnership requires negotiation, empathy, and strategic insight, not just personal inclination or emotion. Travel and exposure to wider regions broaden her understanding of the world. Visits to estates, markets, towns, and religious sites provide glimpses of different social structures, economic systems, and local customs. She observes the lives of peasants, artisans, and merchants, noting the interdependence of different social classes. These experiences teach her empathy, social intelligence, and practical governance, revealing the consequences of policy and the importance of subtle management. Even brief journeys allow her to practice observation, patience, and diplomacy in unfamiliar contexts. Her growing maturity is accompanied by increased responsibility in estate management. She oversees resource allocation, monitors labor, and ensures the household functions smoothly. These tasks provide practical lessons in planning, strategy, and leadership. She observes cause and effect, consequences of mismanagement, and the importance of foresight. Through this, she gains confidence in her ability to lead effectively, both through direct action and subtle influence. Her competence is recognized by those around her, even if quietly, reinforcing her growing authority. Religious life continues to shape her ethical framework and public persona. Daily prayers, rituals, and ceremonial obligations reinforce discipline, patience, and moral authority. Her devotion signals virtue to peers and subordinates alike, while also providing her with moments of introspection. She learns to balance spiritual practice with worldly responsibility, integrating ethical reflection into her decision-making and personal conduct. This balance strengthens her resilience and reinforces her credibility as a figure of both social and moral significance. The princess also learns the art of conflict management. Household disputes, minor rivalries among courtiers, and delicate negotiations all serve as exercises in diplomacy. She observes the causes of tension, mediates subtly, and intervenes when necessary to maintain harmony. She learns that patience, discretion, and careful timing often achieve better results than overt authority. These experiences teach her that power is exercised most effectively through understanding, foresight, and tact, reinforcing the subtle skill set required of a medieval princess. Even as she fulfills these duties, she continues to cultivate personal interests. Music, art, literature, and observation of the natural world provide essential nourishment for her intellect and spirit. These pursuits allow her to develop creativity, critical thinking, and emotional depth. They provide balance in a life dominated by duty and expectation, sustaining her sense of individuality and reinforcing the resilience needed to navigate complex social and political landscapes. Her awareness of succession, inheritance, and political responsibility grows increasingly acute. She observes the long-term implications of family decisions, estate management, and alliances. She learns to consider consequences carefully, anticipate challenges, and act with subtle influence. This awareness shapes her behavior, guiding her interactions, priorities, and decisions. She understands that her role extends beyond personal fulfillment to encompass the stability, prosperity, and legacy of her family and domain. Through these accumulated lessons, observation, discipline, strategic thinking, diplomacy, and self-reflection, she matures into a figure of quiet power and influence. Her life is a continuous interplay between duty and desire, visibility and subtlety, constraint and agency. She understands that her position requires constant attention, patience, and discernment, and she embraces these challenges with grace and intelligence. The medieval princess, once a child guided by tutors and attendants, has become a thoughtful, strategic, and resilient adult, capable of navigating the intricate demands of her world. And through all of this, the medieval princess grows ever more aware of the subtle powers she wields. Not the glittering authority of crowns or jewels, but the quiet, almost invisible influence she exerts over the people, relationships, and circumstances around her. She understands that every word spoken, every gesture made, every expression held, carries meaning and consequence. In this understanding, she discovers both freedom and responsibility, realizing that her position is not only a place of privilege, but also a sphere in which careful thought, observation, and tact are essential. Her life is a careful dance, a measured navigation between what is demanded of her and what she can shape herself. Her mornings continue with precise ritual, each step teaching discipline and mindfulness. She dresses in layers of embroidered fabric, carefully selecting colors and adornments that reflect both her status and the tone she wishes to convey. Her hair is braided or coiled, decorated with jewels or ribbons that signal family alliances and wealth. Yet she has learned to adjust these choices subtly, maintaining grace while asserting small expressions of her personal taste. These details, seemingly minor, are vital signals in the courtly world. They communicate knowledge, attentiveness, and refinement, all of which reinforce her position and influence. Breakfast is a quiet, reflective affair, often taken with close companions or attendants who respect her discretion and privacy. She eats slowly, savoring the simple tastes of bread, cheese, and porridge, while noting the behavior and moods of those around her. Observing these small dynamics becomes an exercise in social intelligence, sharpening her understanding of loyalty, temperament, and intention. Even the mundane act of sharing a meal teaches lessons about hierarchy, timing, and subtle negotiation, all of which prepare her for the more complex interactions of court life. Education remains central, expanding into philosophy, history, languages, and politics. She studies the lives of rulers, saints, and scholars, not only to gain knowledge but also to understand human nature, power, and morality. Lessons are framed as both intellectual exploration and practical guidance, teaching her how decisions shape events, alliances, and perceptions. She learns to analyze character, anticipate outcomes, and discern motivations, developing a strategic mindset that will serve her in the subtle and visible realms of influence alike. Music and the arts continued to provide both refinement and solace. Playing the harp, lute, or psaltery allows her to cultivate dexterity, patience, and expression. She also experiments with improvisation and composition, exploring creativity within structured forms. These activities are deeply personal, a source of quiet joy and a reminder of her individuality within the demands of her role. Music becomes a private language, a way to process emotion and explore ideas without judgment or consequence. The princess's observations of household life grow more sophisticated. She notes the ways in which servants, stewards, and courtiers exercise influence among themselves. Alliances, rivalries, and unspoken agreements provide lessons in negotiation, strategy, and human behavior. She practices subtle intervention, guiding outcomes without overt authority. In doing so, she learns the delicate balance of power, influence, and discretion that defines the effective operation of a noble household. Even small acts of attentionry, minding a steward of a task, praising a servant at the right moment, become demonstrations of her growing skill in subtle leadership. Her relationship with her husband develops further nuance. Shared responsibilities, joint participation in religious and social ceremonies, and moments of private conversation allow her to observe character, predict behavior, and cultivate mutual understanding. Affection, though gradual, develops alongside respect and strategic awareness. She learns that partnership is an art. It requires patience, negotiation, and emotional intelligence as much as shared duty. In these interactions, she also practices compromise, empathy, and subtle persuasion, skills that extend to broader political and social interactions as well. Travel continues to expand her perspective. Visits to neighboring estates, towns, and religious sites expose her to different social and economic realities. She observes the lives of peasants, artisans, and merchants, noting the interdependence of classes and the consequences of mismanagement or neglect. These experiences teach her empathy, practical governance, and an appreciation for the wider world beyond her immediate household. Even brief excursions offer lessons in observation, negotiation, and adaptation, reinforcing the value of careful attention to context and circumstance. Religious practice remains a cornerstone of her life. Daily prayers, ceremonial participation, and ritual observance reinforce discipline, patience, and moral awareness. Her devotion signals virtue to peers and subordinates alike, strengthening her credibility and social authority. Through ritual, she also finds moments of reflection, insight, and quiet reassurance, grounding her amid the responsibilities of her station. Religion becomes both a moral guide and a practical tool, shaping her conduct and enhancing her influence within and beyond her household. the princess's social skills continued to sharpen. She learns to read subtle cues in conversation and behavior, noticing shifts in tone, posture, or eye contact that reveal underlying intentions. These insights allow her to respond strategically, maintaining harmony, building alliances, and avoiding conflict. Over time, she develops a nuanced understanding of negotiation, influence, and perception, recognizing that power is exercised most effectively through subtlety, observation, and timing rather than through force or authority alone. Household management responsibilities grow increasingly complex. She oversees schedules, resources, and the well-being of attendants, ensuring smooth operations while addressing challenges with discretion. Each decision reinforces lessons in planning, strategy, and leadership. She becomes aware of the cascading effects of choices, understanding that every action, even minor, can impact relationships, reputation, and stability. Through careful attention, she strengthens both her competence and her subtle authority. Personal reflection and creative expression remain vital. Music, literature, journaling, and quiet walks allow her to process experiences, explore thought, and cultivate individuality. These activities reinforce resilience, emotional intelligence, and strategic insight, maintaining balance in a life defined by duty and observation. They are private domains of freedom, where she can cultivate creativity, thought, and self-awareness, preserving her sense of self amid the structured demands of noble life. Her understanding of succession, inheritance, and long-term planning grows sharper. She observes decisions regarding heirs, estates, and alliances, learning to anticipate consequences and act with foresight. This awareness informs her behavior, shaping interactions, priorities, and choices. She recognizes that her influence extends beyond immediate concerns, impacting family, household, and even regional stability. Strategic thinking becomes a natural extension of daily life, guiding her actions in subtle yet meaningful ways. Conflict management becomes a practiced skill. Household disputes, courtly rivalries, and negotiations offer opportunities to refine diplomacy. She learns that patience, timing, and discretion often achieve better outcomes than direct confrontation. By guiding situations subtly, she ensures harmony, fosters loyalty, and protects her interests. These experiences cultivate a deep understanding of human behavior and the dynamics of influence, reinforcing her capacity for leadership within constrained circumstances. Even as her responsibilities expand, she maintains private rituals that nourish the mind and spirit. Music, literature, and observation of the natural world provide solace, insight, and inspiration. These practices sustain her creativity, reinforce emotional resilience, and allow moments of personal satisfaction. Through them, she preserves a sense of individuality and autonomy, balancing the outward demands of her role with the inward cultivation of self. By combining observation, patience, strategic thinking, and personal reflection, she matures into a figure of quiet but undeniable influence. Her life is a continuous interplay of duty and autonomy, visibility and subtlety, constraint and agency. She recognizes that her station requires constant attention, refined judgment, and careful management of both relationships and perception. In embracing these responsibilities, she demonstrates the core qualities that defined a medieval princess: wisdom, resilience, composure, and the subtle exercise of power. And so, the medieval princess moves forward in her world, ever aware of the responsibilities and opportunities that shape her life. Each day brings new lessons, new insights, and new challenges, all woven into the complex tapestry of noble existence. Through careful observation, disciplined practice, and subtle influence, she fulfills her role with grace, intelligence, and quiet strength. Her journey reflects the intricate balance of privilege, duty, and personal agency that defined the life of a princess in the Middle Ages. And so, the medieval princess moves through her days with a growing awareness of the subtle powers she possesses, powers that are exercised through observation, patience, and quiet influence rather than overt authority. She has come to understand that a word carefully chosen, a gesture made at the right moment, or a smile offered at just the right time can ripple through her household and beyond, shaping events, alliances, and perceptions. Life in the castle is an intricate choreography, each movement and decision weighted with consequence, and she has learned to perform it with grace, intelligence, and foresight. This awareness, though demanding, also empowers her, revealing that even within constraints, she holds the ability to effect change. Her mornings remain a blend of ritual, observation, and reflection. She rises with the first light, letting it illuminate her chambers as she prepares for the day. The careful selection of clothing, the arrangement of hair, and the adornment with jewelry are exercises not only in aesthetics but in social strategy. Each detail signals her status, family alliances, and personal awareness of etiquette. Even these seemingly mundane tasks require attention, patience, and forethought, reinforcing the discipline she has cultivated since childhood. Dressing becomes both a practice in poise and a daily lesson in influence, demonstrating that subtle details can hold significant power. Breakfast is similarly rich with subtle lessons. Eating with attendants, companions, or visiting dignitaries, she learns to observe, interpret, and respond to the nuances of human behavior. Every glance, word, and posture provides insight into temperament, loyalty, and intention. She practices restraint, balance, and attentiveness, recognizing that social intelligence is as important as any formal education. These moments of observation teach her to read situations carefully, anticipate reactions, and act with measured influence, skills that will serve her in the broader realms of diplomacy and household leadership. Education continues to play a central role in her daily life. Tutors guide her through studies in languages, history, philosophy, theology, and politics. She explores the lives of rulers, saints, scholars, and strategists, learning from their successes, failures, and choices. Lessons in morality, ethics, and governance become intertwined with practical instruction, teaching her how decisions can shape not only her own life but the fate of families, households, and regions. Over time, she develops analytical thinking, foresight, and an understanding of human motivation, refining the skills necessary to navigate the intricate networks of influence and power. Music and artistic practice remain cherished personal refuges. Playing the harp, lute, or psaltery allows her to cultivate dexterity, patience, and creative expression. Sometimes she plays in solitude, other times in the company of tutors or companions, exploring both structured compositions and improvisation. These activities provide emotional release, mental stimulation, and a sense of personal accomplishment. Through art and music, she learns to appreciate nuance, expression, and the interplay between discipline and creativity, a lesson mirrored in the careful negotiation of her social world. The dynamics of her household continue to provide critical training. She observes servants, stewards, and courtiers, noting how influence is exercised subtly through competence, loyalty, and strategic action. She learns to anticipate problems, manage expectations, and intervene discreetly when necessary. By guiding outcomes indirectly, she hones her understanding of leadership and influence, recognizing that effective authority is often quiet, patient, and carefully executed. Each day brings new lessons in human behavior, strategy, and the unseen mechanisms that maintain order and respect within her household. Her relationship with her husband continues to evolve through shared activities, conversation, and observation. She learns to navigate the balance between personal preference and political necessity, understanding that partnership requires negotiation, empathy, and careful attention to both spoken and unspoken signals. Affection grows gradually, alongside mutual respect and strategic collaboration. She observes his character, preferences, and temperament, learning when to assert influence, when to compromise, and when to act with subtle guidance. This partnership becomes a microcosm of her broader understanding of negotiation and diplomacy, a constant practice in the art of social intelligence. Travel expands her horizons further. Visits to estates, towns, and religious sites offer glimpses of the broader social world beyond her household. She observes markets, artisans, peasants, and local governance, noting how decisions, alliances, and behavior influence the welfare of communities. These experiences provide practical lessons in empathy, administration, and political awareness. Even short excursions reinforce the importance of observation, patience, and adaptability, as she learns to respond thoughtfully to unfamiliar circumstances and navigate new social dynamics with care. Religious practice remains a foundation of her daily life. She participates in prayer, ritual, and ceremonial duties with diligence, cultivating patience, discipline, and moral awareness. Her devotion signals virtue and credibility, reinforcing her social and familial authority. Yet religion also provides quiet spaces for reflection, insight, and personal connection. These moments allow her to process her experiences, develop her internal life, and find guidance and strength amid the demands of noble existence. Spiritual practice becomes both a moral compass and a tool for resilience, enhancing her capacity for strategic thought and careful action. Her social acumen deepens as she navigates courtly life. She learns to interpret tone, posture, and subtle gestures, discerning intentions and alliances that are not immediately apparent. She practices timing, discretion, and the measured use of influence to maintain harmony, foster loyalty, and achieve her goals. Over time, she refines the ability to guide outcomes indirectly, appreciating that real power is often exercised behind the scenes, in small acts of observation, persuasion, and strategic engagement. Household management responsibilities grow with her maturity. She oversees resources, schedules, and the welfare of servants, ensuring smooth operations while mitigating potential conflicts. Through these duties, she cultivates foresight, judgment, and the practical application of influence. Each choice, how to resolve a disagreement, how to allocate tasks, how to reward diligence, becomes a lesson in leadership. She learns that subtle guidance, clear observation, and measured intervention often achieve better outcomes than direct control or coercion, reinforcing the principle that influence is both art and strategy. Private rituals sustain her spirit. Music, reading, writing, and contemplation provide spaces for self-expression and introspection, allowing her to maintain a sense of individuality and emotional resilience. These moments are essential in balancing the structured demands of her station, preserving creativity, reflection, and personal autonomy. Through these practices, she continues to develop subtle intelligence, emotional depth, and strategic awareness, reinforcing the qualities that will define her effectiveness as both a noblewoman and a leader. Her awareness of succession, inheritance, and political responsibility sharpens further. She observes the long-term consequences of family decisions, alliances, and governance. This awareness informs her behavior, guiding interactions, priorities, and choices. She understands that her influence affects not only the immediate household, but also the stability and legacy of her lineage. Strategic thinking, foresight, and careful planning become second nature, shaping her approach to relationships, governance, and personal conduct. Conflict management becomes an essential skill. Disputes among servants, tensions among courtiers, and negotiations with allies all provide opportunities to practice diplomacy and tact. She learns that patience, discretion, and timing often yield better results than direct confrontation, reinforcing the subtle nature of effective leadership. By guiding outcomes quietly, she maintains harmony, fosters loyalty, and preserves her personal and familial authority. Through careful observation, disciplined practice, and subtle engagement, she matures into a figure of quiet but undeniable power. Her life is a continuous interplay of duty and autonomy, public performance and private reflection, constraint and subtle agency. She understands that her role demands constant vigilance, refined judgment, and careful cultivation of relationships and perception. By embracing these responsibilities, she embodies the essential qualities of a medieval princess: wisdom, resilience, composure, and strategic influence, exercised with grace and subtlety. And so, the medieval princess moves through her days, ever aware of the delicate balance she must maintain. Each moment offers lessons in observation, patience, strategy, and subtle persuasion. Through discipline, reflection, and careful action, she shapes both her personal identity and her social influence. Her life, though bound by expectation and obligation, is filled with moments of quiet triumph, creativity, and agency. In navigating the intricate web of noble life, she demonstrates what it truly meant to be a princess in the Middle Ages: poised, intelligent, observant, and quietly powerful. And so, the medieval princess continues to move through her days, carrying with her the lessons learned from years of careful observation, structured learning, and subtle exercise of influence. She understands that her power is rarely loud or overt. It resides in the quiet moments, in the choices she makes, in the gestures and words that shape perception, alliances, and the smooth running of her household. Her life is a constant interplay of observation and action, patience and strategy, duty and personal growth, and she has become increasingly adept at navigating these delicate dynamics. Her mornings remain a time of ritual, discipline, and subtle reflection. She rises at dawn, letting the soft light filter through her chamber windows, illuminating the ornate tapestries, carved wood, and gilded furniture that surround her. Dressing is both a practical task and a strategic performance. Each layer of clothing, each jewel or ribbon, communicates her status, her alliances, and her understanding of etiquette. She has learned to select combinations that convey not only beauty but also intelligence, care, and awareness. In these early hours, she practices patience, attention to detail, and mindful action, knowing that even small choices carry meaning. Breakfast is a reflective and instructive time. She eats slowly, noting the demeanor, tone, and gestures of those around her. The servants, companions, and attendants provide subtle cues about loyalty, temperament, and potential conflicts. By observing these patterns, she strengthens her understanding of human behavior and social dynamics. Even in this seemingly simple routine, she practices listening, discernment, and strategic thought, honing the skills that allow her to navigate complex interpersonal landscapes with grace and effectiveness. Education continues to expand her understanding of the world. Tutors provide lessons in languages, history, theology, philosophy, and governance. She studies the lives of rulers, saints, scholars, and strategists, learning both the moral lessons and the practical tactics that shaped history. She is guided to analyze cause and effect, understand motivations, and consider long-term consequences. These studies are not abstract. They are applied, teaching her how decisions, diplomacy, and strategy influence outcomes in both domestic and political spheres. Over time, she develops a sophisticated ability to anticipate events, weigh options, and act with discretion. Music and artistic practice remain essential aspects of her daily life. She plays the harp, lute, or psaltery, sometimes alone, sometimes with tutors or companions. Music allows her to cultivate skill, patience, and creativity while providing a private channel for emotional expression. She experiments with improvisation, composition, and interpretation, learning to appreciate nuance and subtlety. These moments of artistic engagement nurture her spirit, reinforce her individuality, and provide a counterbalance to the structured demands of her station. They remind her that even within a life bound by duty, personal expression and joy are possible. Observation of household life continues to serve as an invaluable teacher. She studies the behavior of servants, stewards, and courtiers, noting how influence is exercised through competence, alliances, and subtle negotiation. She learns to intervene delicately, guiding outcomes without asserting overt authority, understanding that respect and loyalty are earned through consistency, fairness, and strategic discretion. Each interaction becomes a lesson in human behavior, negotiation, and leadership, refining her capacity to manage complex systems and relationships with subtlety and wisdom. Her relationship with her husband deepens and matures. Shared responsibilities, ceremonial duties, and careful attention to each other's preferences allow her to cultivate respect, understanding, and subtle influence. Affection develops gradually alongside strategic awareness, as she learns when to assert herself, when to yield, and when to guide outcomes quietly. This partnership becomes both a practical and symbolic model of collaboration, teaching her lessons in empathy, negotiation, and the subtle arts of influence that extend far beyond their immediate relationship. Travel remains a vital component of her growth. Visits to estates, towns, and religious sites expose her to different economic, social, and cultural realities. She observes the lives of peasants, merchants, and local leaders, learning how decisions, alliances, and governance impact the welfare of communities. These experiences deepen her empathy, strategic insight, and practical knowledge of administration. Even brief trips teach lessons in observation, negotiation, and adaptability, preparing her for challenges beyond the familiar confines of her household and giving her perspective on the broader world. Her family's influence touches. Religious practice continues to guide her daily rhythm. She participates in prayer, ritual, and ceremonial observance, cultivating patience, moral awareness, and inner discipline. Her devotion signals virtue, credibility, and social responsibility, reinforcing her authority in both household and broader social contexts. At the same time, these practices provide moments of private reflection and introspection, allowing her to consider her decisions, intentions, and personal growth. Religion becomes both a spiritual anchor and a subtle tool of guidance, shaping her behavior, reinforcing ethical principles, and providing resilience in the face of complex responsibilities. Her social skills continue to sharpen. She interprets subtle cues in conversation, gesture, and expression, discerning motivations, intentions, and alliances. By observing and analyzing behavior, she learns when to act, when to wait, and how to influence outcomes without confrontation. This mastery of perception and timing becomes a central component of her personal and political power. She recognizes that much of leadership is not about overt commands, but about guiding perception, shaping relationships, and navigating human behavior with intelligence and tact. The management of her household grows increasingly sophisticated. She coordinates resources, supervises schedules, and ensures the well-being of servants and attendants. She learns to anticipate challenges, mediate conflicts, and reward diligence in ways that maintain harmony and efficiency. Each decision, no matter how small, reinforces lessons in foresight, judgment, and practical leadership. Through this process, she hones her ability to influence outcomes subtly, understanding that effective management depends on perception, relationships, and strategic intervention as much as formal authority. Private rituals and creative pursuits continue to sustain her spirit. Music, literature, journaling, and contemplative walks provide opportunities for reflection, emotional growth, and personal expression. These moments of solitude and creativity strengthen her resilience, preserve her individuality, and nurture her capacity for subtle influence. They remind her that even within a life filled with duty and expectation, personal satisfaction, thought, and creativity remain possible and essential for her well-being. Her awareness of succession, inheritance, and long-term responsibilities becomes sharper. She observes the outcomes of family decisions, estate management, and political alliances, understanding the ripple effects across generations. Strategic thinking, foresight, and subtle intervention guide her actions and decisions. She recognizes that her influence extends far beyond personal concerns, impacting family, household, and regional stability. This perspective strengthens her sense of purpose and reinforces the importance of patience, discretion, and careful planning in every action she takes. Conflict management remains a practiced and refined skill. Household disputes, courtly tensions, and negotiations with allies provide opportunities to exercise diplomacy and strategic patience. She learns that indirect guidance, timing, and discretion often achieve more lasting results than direct confrontation. By guiding outcomes subtly, she maintains harmony, fosters loyalty, and preserves her personal and familial authority. Through these experiences, she develops deep insight into human nature, relationships, and the management of influence. Through all of these experiences, education, observation, creative pursuit, religious practice, travel, and social negotiation, the medieval princess matures into a figure of quiet authority and influence. Her life is a continuous interplay of duty and autonomy, visibility and subtlety, structure and personal expression. She understands that her station demands constant attention, refined judgment, and careful management of relationships, perception, and power. By embracing these responsibilities and cultivating her skills, she embodies the essence of a medieval princess, intelligent, observant, resilient, and capable of exercising quiet yet profound influence in every aspect of her world. And so, the medieval princess continues to navigate her days with a growing awareness of the subtle powers she possesses, powers that are exercised through patience, observation, and quiet influence. She understands that her life, while outwardly luxurious and adorned with jewels, silk, and tapestries, is structured not only by wealth and status, but by the complex expectations of behavior, propriety, and strategy. Every glance, word, and gesture carries significance, and she has learned to wield this invisible influence with care, timing, and discretion. Her days are a delicate choreography, a combination of observation, action, reflection, and refinement, and she performs this intricate dance with grace, intelligence, and quiet confidence. Her mornings begin, as always, with ritualized preparation. She rises with the dawn, letting the soft light filter through heavy curtains into her chamber, revealing the intricate tapestries and carved furniture that surround her. Dressing is an exercise in both aesthetics and strategy. The colors of her garments, the embroidery patterns, and even the placement of jewels signal her awareness of etiquette. her alliances, and her position within the household hierarchy. These small choices communicate messages silently, reflecting her understanding that in a world of strict social codes, every detail carries weight. As she dresses, she moves with intention, practicing composure, attention to detail, and mindful movement, recognizing that discipline in these routines strengthens her capacity for leadership and influence. Breakfast is a reflective and instructive part of her day. Eating with attendants or companions, she observes tone, gesture, and demeanor, noting subtle cues that reveal temperament, loyalty, and potential conflicts. These quiet moments of observation teach her the intricacies of human behavior, communication, and negotiation. She has learned to practice restraint, patience, and attentiveness, recognizing that social intelligence is as crucial to her effectiveness as formal education. Even in these early morning rituals, she hones the skills of influence, learning when to speak, when to wait, and when to act with subtle guidance. Education continues to play a central role in shaping her understanding of the world. Tutors guide her through languages, history, theology, philosophy, and governance, providing both practical instruction and moral lessons. She studies the lives of rulers, scholars, strategists, and saints, reflecting on their decisions, successes, and failures. These lessons teach her to analyze cause and effect, understand motivations, and anticipate consequences. Her studies are always framed in practical application, emphasizing the skills required to navigate the complex networks of power and influence within her household and beyond. Over time, she develops a nuanced ability to anticipate outcomes, weigh alternatives, and act with discretion. Art and music continue to provide both personal solace and intellectual enrichment. She practices the harp, lute, or psaltery, experimenting with improvisation, composition, and interpretation. Music allows her to cultivate patience, focus, and emotional expression while reinforcing creativity and individuality. These private moments of engagement become sanctuaries in a life dominated by duty, offering space for reflection, joy, and the cultivation of personal taste. The arts remind her that even within strict social structures, personal expression and quiet delight remain possible and meaningful. Observation of household dynamics remains an essential lesson. She studies servants, stewards, and courtiers, noting how influence is exercised, loyalty earned, and alliances formed. She practices subtle intervention, guiding outcomes without asserting direct control, understanding that effective authority is often quiet, patient, and carefully executed. Each interaction strengthens her awareness of human behavior, strategy, and leadership, preparing her to manage increasingly complex relationships and responsibilities. She learns that small gestures, timely words, and careful attentiveness often produce more significant effects than direct commands. Her relationship with her husband continues to deepen through shared responsibilities, ceremony, and careful negotiation. She observes his temperament, preferences, and priorities, learning to cultivate mutual respect, subtle influence, and gradual affection. Partnership, she realizes, is as much an art of negotiation and understanding as it is a bond of personal sentiment. By navigating this relationship with patience and strategic awareness, she gains insight into the broader principles of diplomacy, compromise, and influence that extend beyond personal interactions into the wider political and social realms. Travel and exposure to new environments continue to shape her understanding of the world. Visits to estates, towns, and religious sites reveal diverse economic, social, and cultural realities. She observes the lives of peasants, artisans, merchants, and local authorities, noting how governance, resources, and alliances impact communities. These experiences cultivate empathy, practical knowledge, and strategic insight. Even short journeys teach her the importance of observation, adaptation, and careful negotiation, providing a broader perspective that informs her decisions and actions within her household and courtly sphere. Religious practice continues to guide her life, shaping both her character and her social standing. Daily prayers, ritual observances, and participation in ceremonial duties reinforce patience, discipline, and moral awareness. Her devotion signals virtue, credibility, and responsibility, while also offering quiet moments of reflection and introspection. Religion becomes both a source of personal resilience and a subtle instrument of influence, informing her judgment, guiding ethical decision-making, and reinforcing her social authority. These practices anchor her in the larger moral and spiritual frameworks of her time, strengthening her ability to navigate complex social and political landscapes with discernment. Her social acumen grows ever more sophisticated. She interprets subtle cues in tone, posture, and expression, discerning intentions, loyalties, and potential conflicts. She learns when to act, when to observe, and when to guide outcomes indirectly, developing a mastery of perception and timing. These skills become central to her effectiveness, demonstrating that true power often resides in subtlety, patience, and the careful orchestration of relationships rather than in overt displays of dominance or wealth. Household management grows increasingly intricate. She oversees schedules, resources, and the well-being of servants and attendants, ensuring smooth operations while addressing challenges discreetly. Through these duties, she cultivates foresight, judgment, and practical leadership. Each decision, no matter how minor, reinforces her ability to guide outcomes, maintain harmony, and assert authority without force. She learns that subtle guidance, consistency, and attention to detail often achieve greater influence than direct intervention. Private rituals continue to nourish her spirit. Music, literature, journaling, and solitary walks provide time for reflection, creativity, and personal growth. These moments sustain her individuality, nurture resilience, and reinforce the subtle skills of observation, insight, and strategic thought. Through these practices, she preserves a sense of self and emotional balance, ensuring that her public obligations do not eclipse her private identity and inner life. Her awareness of succession, inheritance, and long-term responsibilities sharpens with maturity. She observes the outcomes of family decisions, estate management, and political alliances, understanding the far-reaching consequences of her actions. Strategic thinking, foresight, and careful planning guide her behavior, reinforcing her role as both a responsible steward and an influential figure. She recognizes that her influence extends across generations, shaping not only the present but also the future stability and legacy of her family and domain. Conflict management becomes a refined skill. Household disagreements, courtly tensions, and negotiations with allies offer opportunities to exercise diplomacy, patience, and tact. She learns that indirect guidance, careful timing, and subtle persuasion often yield more durable results than confrontation. By maintaining harmony through discreet intervention, she fosters loyalty, preserves authority, and strengthens her influence within and beyond the household. Through years of disciplined practice, observation, reflection, and subtle action, the medieval princess emerges as a figure of quiet yet profound authority. Her life is a continuous interplay of duty and autonomy, public performance and private cultivation, constraint and strategic agency. She has learned to navigate the complex web of expectations, responsibilities, and relationships that define her station with intelligence, grace, and resilience. In every word, gesture, and choice, she demonstrates the subtle mastery of influence that was essential to surviving and thriving as a princess in the Middle Ages. And so, the medieval princess moves through her days with a deepening sense of purpose, quietly mastering the subtle powers available to her. She has come to understand that her life, though cloaked in luxury and adorned with jewels and silks, is not defined solely by wealth or title. Instead, it is shaped by the delicate interplay of duty, perception, observation, and careful action. Each gesture, glance, and word carries significance, rippling through her household, court, and wider world. She has learned to wield this invisible influence with precision, timing, and patience, understanding that real power is often quiet, discreet, and persistent rather than loud, ostentatious, or immediate. Her mornings continue to be a structured dance of ritual, preparation, and observation. Rising at dawn, she allows the soft light to illuminate her chamber, bringing into focus the carved furniture, painted panels, and embroidered tapestries that surround her. Dressing is both a practical task and a symbolic act. The colors, patterns, and embellishments she chooses communicate status, alliances, and careful attention to etiquette. Each braid, ribbon, or jewel is placed with intention, reflecting her growing understanding that even small details can communicate competence, awareness, and subtle authority. Through these routines, she practices patience, mindfulness, and composure, refining the qualities that make her not only beautiful, but perceptive, strategic, and respected. Breakfast provides both nourishment and an opportunity to observe, sharing the table with attendants, companions, or visiting dignitaries. She pays careful attention to tone, gesture, and demeanor. The smallest expressions, a fleeting frown, a hesitated glance, a quietly chosen word, offer insight into temperament, loyalty, or emerging conflict. These moments are exercises in social intelligence, helping her to read intentions, anticipate reactions, and respond with discretion. Even routine interactions are training grounds for the skills she will rely upon throughout her life: patience, observation, and the art of subtle influence. Education remains central to her development. Tutors continue to guide her through languages, history, theology, philosophy, and governance. She studies the lives of rulers, saints, strategists, and scholars, reflecting on both their moral lessons and practical decisions. These lessons teach her to analyze cause and effect, understand human motivation, and anticipate consequences. Education becomes a tool, not only for intellectual growth, but for practical application. She learns how decisions, negotiation, and foresight shape the outcomes of households, alliances, and political landscapes. Over time, she develops critical thinking, strategic insight, and the ability to act with deliberation and subtlety. Art and music remain sanctuaries of personal expression. She practices the harp, lute, or psaltery, exploring improvisation, composition, and interpretation. Music strengthens patience, dexterity, and focus, while providing a private space for emotion and creativity. These activities reinforce her individuality, offering quiet moments of reflection and joy. Even within the strictures of noble life, she discovers that personal expression, creativity, and aesthetic appreciation are vital for her well-being, nurturing resilience, intelligence, and subtle judgment. Observation of household dynamics continues to be a crucial teacher. She watches how servants, stewards, and courtiers exercise influence, form alliances, and navigate rivalries. She learns to intervene subtly, guiding outcomes without overt assertion of power, understanding that authority is often most effective when exercised quietly and indirectly. Each interaction strengthens her insight into human behavior, negotiation, and leadership, preparing her to manage increasingly complex responsibilities with grace, foresight, and subtle influence. Her partnership with her husband grows more nuanced. Shared duties, ceremonial obligations, and private conversation allow her to understand his character, anticipate his decisions, and cultivate a balance of respect, influence, and affection. She learns that partnership requires patience, negotiation, and strategic awareness, recognizing that a marriage, particularly in the noble context, is both a personal and political alliance. Through this relationship, she hones her ability to balance emotional intelligence with diplomacy, preparing her for broader challenges in courtly and familial life. Travel continues to broaden her perspective. Visits to estates, towns, and religious sites reveal diverse social, economic, and cultural realities. She observes markets, artisans, peasants, and local authorities, understanding the interdependence of communities and the consequences of mismanagement or neglect. These journeys provide practical lessons in empathy, governance, and strategic decision-making. They also reinforce her ability to adapt, negotiate, and observe with care, skills that will inform her actions within her household and beyond, allowing her to respond thoughtfully to challenges in unfamiliar contexts. Religious practice remains a foundation of her daily routine. Prayer, ritual, and ceremonial participation cultivate discipline, moral awareness, and resilience. Her devotion signals virtue, credibility, and authority, reinforcing her social position while providing moments of reflection and introspection. Religion becomes both a moral compass and a subtle instrument of influence, guiding her decisions, reinforcing ethical behavior, and sustaining her personal fortitude. These practices remind her of the responsibilities that come with privilege, grounding her in a framework of patience, contemplation, and strategic awareness. Her social skills continue to sharpen. She learns to interpret subtle cues, anticipate intentions, and navigate shifting alliances. Timing, discretion, and subtle persuasion become essential tools in maintaining harmony and asserting influence. She understands that much of power is exercised through careful observation, interpretation, and strategic engagement, rather than through overt displays of authority or wealth. These lessons, honed over years, allow her to negotiate effectively, manage relationships, and influence outcomes in ways both subtle and enduring. Household management responsibilities become increasingly intricate. She coordinates resources, oversees schedules, and ensures the well-being of servants and attendants. She anticipates challenges, mediates conflicts, and reinforces loyalty and cooperation. Each decision strengthens her judgment, foresight, and practical leadership skills. She learns that subtle guidance and consistent attention to detail often produce better outcomes than direct intervention, reinforcing the understanding that influence is as much about perception and relationships as it is about formal authority. Private rituals continue to sustain her spirit and individuality. Music, literature, journaling, and contemplative walks provide space for reflection, emotional growth, and personal expression. These moments preserve her identity, strengthen resilience, and reinforce her capacity for subtle observation and strategic thought. They remind her that even within a life structured by duty and expectation, private fulfillment and personal development remain essential for wisdom and balance. Her awareness of succession, inheritance, and long-term responsibilities grows sharper with maturity. She observes the outcomes of family decisions, alliances, and estate management, understanding the ripple effects across generations. Strategic thinking, foresight, and careful planning guide her choices and interactions. She recognizes that her influence extends beyond immediate circumstances, shaping both the present and the future stability and legacy of her household and family. This understanding reinforces her purpose and cultivates patience, careful judgment, and nuanced action. Conflict management continues to refine her leadership. Household disputes, courtly tensions, and negotiations with allies provide opportunities to practice diplomacy, patience, and subtle influence. She learns that indirect guidance, timing, and observation often produce more lasting results than direct confrontation. Through these experiences, she fosters loyalty, preserves authority, and strengthens her capacity to navigate the complex web of relationships that define her station. Through years of education, observation, creativity, reflection, and subtle practice, the medieval princess matures into a figure of quiet but undeniable power. Her life is a continuous interplay of duty and autonomy, public visibility and private cultivation, structure and subtle agency. She has learned to navigate the intricate web of expectations, relationships, and responsibilities with intelligence, grace, and resilience. In her words, gestures, and choices, she demonstrates the qualities that defined a medieval princess: wisdom, strategic insight, composure, and the ability to exercise influence, subtly, yet profoundly. And so, the medieval princess, having navigated childhood, adolescence, and the early years of adulthood, now moves into a stage of life defined by mastery, subtle authority, and profound understanding. Her existence, which once revolved around strict routines, tutors, and observation, has evolved into a life of deliberate action, quiet influence, and reflective thought. She knows that every choice she makes carries consequence, and she has learned to act with precision, patience, and discernment, blending the visible duties of a noblewoman with the invisible, nuanced power that shapes households, alliances, and perceptions. Her mornings are still a structured sequence of ritual and preparation. She rises with the dawn, allowing the soft light to touch her chamber, highlighting tapestries, carved wood, and the subtle elegance of her springs. Dressing is both practical and symbolic. The fabrics, jewelry, and colors she selects communicate not only her status but her awareness of alliances, etiquette, and social perception. She moves deliberately, each braid, ribbon, or ornament placed with intention. These small acts reinforce her discipline, attention to detail, and strategic thinking. Even these daily rituals serve as subtle lessons in poise, patience, and the quiet management of influence, shaping the way she engages with the world. Breakfast provides a continued lesson in social awareness. Sharing the table with attendants, companions, or visiting dignitaries, she notes tone, posture, and subtle gestures. She observes loyalty, temperament, and potential tension, refining her skill in interpretation and timing. Through these moments of quiet observation, she learns when to speak, when to wait, and when a simple expression can guide relationships and outcomes more effectively than words. Even mundane routines serve as exercises in the subtle art of influence and social intelligence, strengthening the skills that define her role as a princess. Education remains a lifelong pursuit. Tutors, texts, and reflection guide her through language, history, theology, philosophy, and governance. She studies rulers, strategists, saints, and scholars, reflecting on the consequences of their decisions, both moral and practical. These lessons teach her analysis, foresight, and the subtle use of authority, shaping her understanding of human behavior and the mechanisms of power. She learns to consider multiple perspectives, anticipate long-term consequences, and act with both patience and subtlety, understanding that effective leadership often requires observation, reflection, and timing rather than force or declaration. Music and artistic practice continue to nurture her mind and spirit. Playing the harp, lute, or psaltery provides both skill development and emotional expression. She explores composition, improvisation, and interpretation, cultivating creativity within structured forms. These practices offer solace, personal satisfaction, and a means of processing the complexities of her life. They reinforce individuality, resilience, and the recognition that even within a life bound by duty, personal growth and private joy are possible and vital. Observation of household dynamics has become a refined art. She watches the interactions of servants, stewards, and courtiers, noticing how alliances are formed, loyalty is earned, and subtle negotiations shape outcomes. She intervenes quietly when necessary, guiding results without overt assertion of power. These lessons deepen her understanding of leadership, human behavior, and influence. She recognizes that subtle, patient guidance often produces more lasting impact than direct commands, strengthening her ability to navigate both domestic and political spheres with intelligence and grace. Her relationship with her husband has matured alongside her understanding of influence and partnership. Shared responsibilities, ceremonial participation, and careful attention to character and temperament allow her to cultivate respect, influence, and gradually deepening affection. She learns when to negotiate, when to yield, and when subtle guidance is most effective. This partnership becomes both a personal and political foundation, teaching her lessons in compromise, empathy, and the subtle arts of negotiation that extend into every aspect of her life. Travel and exposure to the wider world continue to expand her perspective. Visits to neighboring estates, towns, and religious sites reveal different social, economic, and cultural realities. She observes artisans, merchants, peasants, and local leaders, noting how governance, alliances, and resources impact communities. These experiences teach empathy, practical knowledge, and strategic thinking. Even brief journeys reinforce lessons in observation, adaptability, and subtle negotiation, preparing her to respond thoughtfully to unfamiliar circumstances and diverse challenges. Religious devotion remains central. Daily prayers, ritual, and ceremonial participation cultivate patience, moral awareness, and inner discipline. Her devotion signals virtue, credibility, and authority, reinforcing her social and familial standing. At the same time, these practices provide private moments of reflection, contemplation, and guidance, allowing her to consider her decisions, intentions, and actions. Religion becomes both a personal anchor and a tool for subtle influence, shaping her character, reinforcing ethical conduct, and providing strength in navigating complex social and political situations. Her social acumen has become finely tuned. She interprets tone, gesture, and posture with precision, discerning intention, loyalty, and potential challenges. Timing, discretion, and subtle persuasion guide her interactions, enabling her to maintain harmony, foster cooperation, and exert influence without overt displays of authority. She understands that true power is often exercised quietly, through careful observation, strategic engagement, and nuanced action. These skills have become central to her identity, shaping how she navigates the demands and expectations of noble life. Household management responsibilities have reached a sophisticated level. She oversees schedules, resources, and personnel, ensuring the smooth operation of her household while anticipating challenges and mitigating potential conflicts. Each decision how to assign tasks, reward diligence, or mediate tension reinforces her judgment, foresight, and practical leadership. She understands that subtle intervention and consistent attention to detail often achieve more effective outcomes than direct authority, further refining her skill in managing both people and perception. Private rituals and creative pursuits sustain her spirit. Music, literature, journaling, and contemplative walks provide essential spaces for reflection, emotional growth, and personal expression. These activities nurture her individuality, reinforce resilience, and strengthen her capacity for observation, insight, and strategic thought. Even amid the structured demands of her station, she maintains a sense of personal identity and fulfillment, understanding that private cultivation of the mind and spirit enhances her effectiveness and composure in public life. Her awareness of succession, inheritance, and long-term responsibility is now profound. She observes the consequences of family decisions, alliances, and estate management, understanding the ripple effects across generations. Strategic thinking, foresight, and careful planning guide her actions, reinforcing her role as a responsible steward and influential figure. She recognizes that her influence extends far beyond immediate circumstances, shaping the stability, prosperity, and legacy of her household and family for years to come. Conflict management has become a subtle and effective art. Household disputes, courtly rivalries, and negotiations with allies provide opportunities to exercise diplomacy, patience, and discreet intervention. She has learned that indirect guidance, careful timing, and observation often produce more durable outcomes than confrontation or force. By fostering harmony and loyalty through subtle means, she maintains authority, preserves relationships, and strengthens her capacity to influence outcomes across multiple spheres of life. Through decades of disciplined learning, observation, reflection, and subtle practice, the medieval princess emerges as a figure of quiet but undeniable influence. Her life, shaped by both duty and opportunity, is a testament to patience, strategic thinking, empathy, and composure. She demonstrates that the essence of being a princess in the Middle Ages was not simply about wealth, titles, or visible grandeur, but about the mastery of observation, influence, subtle authority, and careful navigation of complex human and political landscapes. Her words, gestures, and choices reveal intelligence, grace, and resilience, creating a legacy defined as much by quiet wisdom as by the splendor of her surroundings. And as the sun sets over the castle walls, bathing the tapestries, carved furniture, and jeweled adornments in a soft glow, the princess reflects on her life. Each challenge faced, each lesson learned, and each subtle influence exercised has shaped her into a figure capable of navigating the delicate balance of duty and personal agency. She has understood, and continues to embody, the true art of medieval princehood, a life of measured power, careful observation, cultivated intelligence, and quiet grace, a life where influence is exercised thoughtfully, relationships are managed delicately, and every day brings opportunities to shape the world subtly, yet profoundly. And so ends this journey through the life of a medieval princess, revealing not only the privileges of her station, but the careful discipline, strategic intelligence, and subtle mastery of influence required to live gracefully within the extraordinary yet demanding world she inherited. Her life, intricate and disciplined, teaches that the essence of nobility lies not only in title or wealth, but in patience, perception, subtlety, and wisdom, the quiet powers that shaped kingdoms and preserved legacies across the Middle Ages.